Chapter 1486. Auntie. The Beast King stared at the mysterious woman. We are going to help your nephew. The mysterious woman smiled. No need. The Beast King said after a moment of silence, You want him dead? A trace of surprise flashed in the mysterious woman's eyes. How did you know? The Beast King looked at the mysterious woman. Northern wilderness is your doing. The mysterious woman laughed. As expected of the Beast King. Very smart. Everything you say is right. The Beast King said in a deep voice, Your Excellency, do you know that he has a sister? The mysterious woman nodded. I do. The invincible Tian Ming. The Beast King looked at the mysterious woman with a serious expression. Since you know, why do you still want to kill him? The mysterious woman smiled. That's my business. As for you beast men, just stay in your beast man realm and don't come out. I have no enmity with you and I don't want to destroy you. Do you understand? The Beast King was silent. The mysterious woman looked at the Beast King and smiled. I'm not joking with you. And I won't give you a second chance. Then she turned and left. The Beast King was silent. Not far away, the Beastman said, King. The Beast King slowly closed his eyes. I can't afford to offend my sister, and I can't afford to offend this auntie either. Let them play by themselves. I can't beat anyone. I'm scared. I'm scared. Then he turned and left. After the mysterious woman left, she did not return to the sacred region. Instead, she went to the divine city. When she entered the tavern, the waiter and the shopkeeper's face suddenly became serious. The shopkeeper walked in front of the mysterious woman and bowed. Your Excellency is? The mysterious woman smiled. A pot of spring sword. The shopkeeper looked at the mysterious woman. Please wait. Soon, the shopkeeper brought out a pot of spring sword. The mysterious woman opened the bottle and gently sniffed. Not bad. Suddenly, a voice came from the inner courtyard. What's the matter? The mysterious woman picked up a peanut and put it in her mouth. I don't want to kill you. After all, we are old acquaintances. The inner courtyard was silent. The mysterious woman said again, This is our family's private matter. Outsiders should stay out of it. Okay? The inner courtyard was still silent. The mysterious woman smiled and said, I want you to give me an answer. Otherwise, I won't be polite. In the inner courtyard, a sigh sounded. Why did you have to do this? The mysterious woman chuckled, You know the reason. In the inner courtyard, the voice said, After all, he is your nephew. The mysterious woman narrowed her eyes. Boom! The entire tavern turned into nothingness in an instant. The shopkeeper and the waiter's expressions changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with terror. At this moment, both of them could smell the scent of death. The mysterious woman poured herself a cup of wine and drank it in one gulp. Why is he still alive? As she spoke, she turned around to look at a small house. Even though she was smiling, it was slightly bone-piercingly gloomy, and it caused others to shiver. On what basis? Inside the hut, the man was silent. The mysterious woman smiled and stood up. For the sake of an old friend, I don't want to kill you. After all, this matter has nothing to do with you. However, I don't want you seniors to help him. If you dare to interfere, don't blame me for being ruthless. Then, she stood up and left. At this moment, the man in the hut suddenly said, Have you ever considered his feelings? The mysterious woman stopped. After a moment of silence, she said, I don't hate him. He tried his best back then. However, I still want to seek justice. The man in the hut sighed again. Have you ever thought about that woman? He will be considerate and won't hurt you. However, that woman, to continue this chapter, please continue to the next page. If you do this, you will anger that woman. Once she returns, many people will die. Do you understand? The mysterious woman smiled and said, "So what? Anyway, I've already prepared myself to die. I'm not even afraid of death, so why would I be afraid of her?" The man in the hut sighed again. "Is there really no way to resolve this matter?" The mysterious woman smiled and walked into the distance. "Either he dies, or I die." Soon, the mysterious woman disappeared into the distance. At this moment, the shopkeeper came before the hut and bowed respectfully. "Master." This man, the man in the hut, sighed softly and said no more. Taoism. After the mysterious woman left, she went directly to Taoism. Inside the hall, the third lady sat cross-legged in front of the statue of the Taoism's ancestor. The mysterious woman looked at the statue of the Taoism's ancestor and said with a smile, "Your master is a very amazing person." The third lady opened her eyes and said with a smile, "Thank you." The mysterious woman looked at the third lady. "You are also a smart person." The third lady said, "Boss, I won't interfere in the matters of the fifth dimension. I don't have the ability to interfere." The mysterious woman smiled and said, "I'm not here to cause trouble for you. I'm here to ask you something." The third lady nodded. "Boss, please speak." The mysterious woman said, "Do you know where the spirit of the great Tao is?" The spirit of the great Tao. After a moment of silence, the third lady said, "To tell you the truth, I'm also looking for the spirit of the great Tao." The mysterious woman smiled and said, "You don't know either?" The third lady nodded. When young Master Yi combined the 9 scriptures into one, the spirit of the great Tao did appear. However, for some reason, she escaped. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. The mysterious woman looked at the third lady. "Why do you think she escaped?" The third lady shook her head. "I really don't know." The mysterious woman smiled and said, "Make a guess." After a moment of silence, the third lady said softly, "She should have sensed the calamity on young Master Yi, or perhaps she sensed your existence." The mysterious woman blinked. "Am I that scary?" The third young miss hesitated for a moment, and then she said, "Sir, you don't seem like an extremely evil person. Moreover, with your strength, you don't need the Taoist scriptures at all, so why do you still target Yi Xian? Is it a personal grudge?" The mysterious woman smiled and said, "It is indeed a personal grudge." The third lady nodded. "I understand." The mysterious woman glanced at the statue of the Taoism's ancestor and said with a smile, "I'm leaving." With that, she turned around and left. The third lady said, "Boss, take care." The mysterious woman smiled and said, "I'm not the boss. The woman in the plain dress is the real boss." The third lady said softly, "I can't defeat them. They are all bosses." The mysterious woman laughed and said, "Miss, your future is limitless." After saying that, she disappeared. In the hall, the third lady looked at the statue of the Taoism's ancestor and said softly, "Master. Disciple finally understands what you said. There is always someone better than you. In the 5-dimensional universe." In the hall, Nian Nian was leaning on Yi Xian's thigh and was sleeping soundly. In front of the two of them, there were fish bones on the ground. Yi Xian looked at the sky outside the hall and pondered. During this time, he had been thinking about a question. Was the mysterious expert in the Holy Land the woman who claimed to be his aunt? If it was, it didn't make sense. The reason why his bloodline could be awakened was because of the other party's help. Since the other party wanted him dead, why did she help him improve his bloodline? Yi Xian was a little puzzled. This chapter is not over, please turn the page. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. The next moment, he gently placed Nian Nian on the ground and disappeared from the hall. The moment Yi Xian disappeared, Nian Nian suddenly opened her eyes. In the 5-dimensional universe, Yi Xian looked at the group of people in front of him. "Who are you?" In front of him stood more than 30 people. These people's auras were extremely powerful and had already surpassed the god realm. The middle-aged man in the lead was Biyao. Biyao stared at Yi Xian. "Where is that woman?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Woman? What woman? Biyao stared at Yi Xian and slowly clenched his fists. Your name is Yi Xian, right? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Speaking of which, is there some misunderstanding? Misunderstanding. Biyao's face became a little sinister. Misunderstanding? You're telling me it's a misunderstanding? As his voice fell, he suddenly blasted out a punch. In the distance, Yi Xian frowned slightly and raised his sword. Boom! The space in front of the two of them exploded. Then, Yi Xian retreated hundreds of feet. As for Biyao, he also retreated hundreds of feet. Biyao stared at Yi Xian. I'll ask you one last time, where is that woman? Yi Xian stood with his sword in hand. Sir, I think there must be some misunderstanding between us. I think you don't want to be used by others, right? Biyao sneered. Misunderstanding? Yi Xian, you actually have the nerve to say it's a misunderstanding. You absorbed the souls of my clansmen, and then you tell me it's a misunderstanding? Souls. Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment, his face turned ugly. At this moment, he was sure that the mysterious enemy was his so-called aunt. That woman was digging a hole for him. Damn it. This hole was too deep. At this moment, Biyao sneered. Tell me, is this a misunderstanding? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, I want to say that these souls were forcefully absorbed by a woman. Do you believe me? Yi Xian. Biyao suddenly said fiercely, do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Forcefully absorbed by you? What is she to you? Is she your mother? Yi Xian was slightly helpless. I really didn't lie to you this time. She really did force me to absorb them. Biyao stared fixedly at Yi Xian as if he wanted to kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian was slightly speechless. Why doesn't anyone believe me when I tell the truth? Damn it. That woman. At this moment, Yi Xian felt that he was in a terrible state. But he didn't understand why that woman would do that. Meanwhile, Biyao suddenly said, let that woman come out. Yi Xian gazed at Biyao. I don't know where she is. Really? Biyao's face was expressionless. It's fine. I don't believe that she won't come out once I catch you. As he spoke, he charged directly at Yi Xian. Behind him, the super experts also rushed over. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly held his sword horizontally to his neck. Seeing this, Biyao suddenly stopped and looked at Yi Xian. What are you doing? Yi Xian looked at Biyao and sneered. You want to use me to threaten my aunt? No way. If you dare take another step forward, I'll kill myself. Let me tell you, once I die, my aunt will go crazy and take revenge on you. She will hide in the dark and take revenge on you. Let me ask you, are you afraid? Biyao narrowed his eyes. I don't believe that you really dare to kill yourself. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly held his sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Pfft! Yi Xian immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Biyao was dumbfounded. Damn it, are all modern people so crazy? Suicide just because you say so. End of this chapter. Chapter 1487. Needless to say, Biyao was quite stunned right now. He really hadn't intended to kill Yi Xian, and he'd mainly intended to capture Yi Xian so that the mysterious woman wouldn't act against him. However, he'd never imagined that Yi Xian would be so staunch and take his own life just like that. That's too ruthless. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly spoke in a hoarse voice. So long as I die, then my aunt will definitely stop at nothing to take revenge on all of you. Biyao gazed at Yi Xian and spoke fiercely. She killed countless members of our clan and even took countless treasures from us. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he heard this. Damn it. That woman is really ruthless. Biyao stared fixedly at Yi Xian. All of you will repay this enmity with your blood. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, I'll take all of you to her. Do all of you dare? Biyao was slightly hesitant. Even though he'd awakened most of the experts in his clan, he still didn't have the information to deal with that mysterious woman. That woman was too strong. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, I'll tell you the truth. Don't get angry. That is, the number of people you have is really not enough for my aunt to fight. Do you know how strong she is? Biyao gazed at Yi Xian. How strong? Yi Xian spoke seriously. I don't know the specifics. All I know is that she kills God-rank realm experts like ants, and experts above the God-rank realm can't even withstand a single blow from her. Biyao glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian continued, I think that the few of you aren't enough. Why don't you call more people over, and then I'll take all of you to her? Biyao gazed at Yi Xian. You don't seem to be worried about her. Yi Xian laughed embarrassedly. My aunt is really good at fighting. Biyao gazed at Yi Xian and laughed coldly. Just you wait. And that aunt of yours. I'll make all of you pay the price. With that, he turned around and left. Seeing that Biyao and the rest had left, Yi Xian pulled out the sword from his abdomen, his face gradually darkening. Damn it, that woman was setting him up. He finally understood why the other party forced him to absorb those souls and even gave him treasures. They wanted to make him a scapegoat. Although he had obtained some benefits, it was obvious that he had formed a bad relationship with this mysterious force. What was he trying to do? Yi Xian sheathed his sword and turned to leave. At this moment, Bai Dizzy appeared in front of Yi Xian. He glanced at the end of the starry sky in the distance. Are you all right? Yi Xian shook his head. I'll handle it. As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of sword light and vanished into the distance. In the starry sky, Bai Dizzy's eyes flashed with a trace of worry. Saint level. In front of the bamboo house, the holy master was bowing, and no one knew what he was saying. After a while, the woman in the bamboo house shook her head and smiled. This little fellow is really interesting. He sent those fellows from the wilderness north away with just a few words. He's just like his father. His eloquence is extraordinary. The holy master hesitated for a moment and said, Master, what kind of force is the wilderness north? The woman said softly, it's a very, very ancient force. They belong to the prehistoric civilization. The holy master frowned slightly. Prehistoric civilization? The woman nodded. It's a civilization that existed before the Taoist scripture civilization. However, there are no records of that civilization in the entire universe because the Taoist scripture civilization was 1,000,000 years away from that civilization. During that 1,000,000 years, there was a blank period. In other words, it was the primitive era. During that era, there were pitifully few humans, and they didn't even have a written language. Therefore, there are no records of the prehistoric era. As for why they sealed themselves, no one knows. At this point, she paused for a moment and continued. However, this prehistoric civilization is a little strange. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment onwards, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to dismiss Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince, why did you discard him for no reason? The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a clan matter, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his crown prince position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged, "Discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder said coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position, and it is everyone's wish. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed, "I'm Jianghu, greeting the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and he hurriedly bowed deeply, "I will go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly, "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, so don't show any mercy. Do you understand?" Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was torn, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out, "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu, and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yiling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yiling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince, why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yiling coldly, this is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave. Yiling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, you should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply, this subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pang! Chapter 1488. Needless to say, Yi Xian was a little shocked at this moment. His own father killed his own grandfather? Can it be played like this? At this moment, the voice sighed softly. "It's not your father's fault. It's your grandfather who wanted to devour your father's bloodline. Moreover, your grandfather is really not a good person. These are all old matters. You will naturally know about these grudges in the future." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I don't really want to know about these grudges now. I just want to know if anyone has come to take that woman." The voice said, "Originally, your bloodline could suppress her, but now, your bloodline has been suppressed and sealed. How can you play with her?" Yi Xian was speechless. "I also didn't know that my aunt was such a scammer." The voice said, "After all, she is your aunt. Why don't you go and talk to her? Maybe you can resolve some of the grudges from the past. After all, you are quite good at bluffing." Yi Xian was speechless. The voice said again, "Aunt still has things to do. Take care of yourself." In the hall, Yi Xian sighed softly. Grudges. What grudges? What does the matters of the older generation have to do with me? Why are they all beating me up? After a long time, Yi Xian sighed again and turned to leave. I can only go and talk to that woman. Just as eldest aunt said, they were a family, so why should they fight? It would be good to talk. Of course, I can't beat her. After leaving the four-dimensional universe, Yi Xian came to the holy region. Let's talk. As soon as Yi Xian arrived at the holy region, the holy master appeared in front of him. At this time, the holy master's arm had already recovered. The holy master looked at Yi Xian. What do you want? Yi Xian said with a smile, kill people. Oh, no, chat. I'm here to chat. The holy master stared at Yi Xian. Chat? What do we have to chat about? Yi Xian pointed below. I'm here to talk to my aunt. Holy Lord frowned. Yi Xian, what nonsense are you spouting? Yi Xian blinked. Holy Lord, don't you know that the woman below is my aunt? My dear aunt. The sacred leader glared at Yi Xian. Are you here to acknowledge your kin? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Saint Master was expressionless. There's no one down there. You can leave. Yi Xian chuckled. He took out the supreme sword and gently tapped it on his palm. He didn't say anything and just smiled. The sacred lord's expression was somewhat unsightly. Damn it, this guy is threatening me. However, he really couldn't do anything to Yi Xian. God realm experts couldn't do anything to Yi Xian because Yi Xian's physical body was too monstrous. Deity realm powerhouses were already unable to pose any substantial threat to Yi Xian's fleshy body. Suddenly, a voice resounded from below, ask him to come down. The sacred lord bowed respectfully to the people below. Then he looked at Yi Xian and said, you can leave now. Yi Xian walked down, and it didn't take long for him to arrive before a bamboo forest. He passed through the bamboo forest and saw a bamboo house. At this moment, a voice resounded from within the house, come in. Yi Xian didn't hesitate and walked in. The furnishings within the house were very simple. There was only a bed, a bamboo table, and 2 bamboo chairs. The woman sat before the table and was reading a book. The woman smiled when she saw Yi Xian. Sit. Yi Xian nodded. He sat before the woman. There was a chessboard on the table, and the white piece was in a hopeless situation. Yi Xian smiled, is this white piece me? The woman shook her head and smiled, it's not you. It's me. Yi Xian frowned slightly, you? The woman smiled, yes. No matter where I go, I'll die in the end. Yi Xian looked at the woman, I heard from others that you're really my aunt? The woman nodded, it's true, and we're related. Yi Xian was puzzled, why did you do this to me? The woman smiled, some grudges. Yi Xian asked, the older generation? The woman nodded. Yi Xian looked at the woman, is it appropriate for you to bully the younger generation for the grudges of the older generation? The woman smiled, I can't beat the older generation. Hearing this, Yi Xian's mouth twitched, and he almost went berserk. F***ck, you can't beat the older generation, so you come to beat me? F***ck me, the woman smiled, did you come to me today to talk about this? Yi Xian said, I want to understand something. The woman put down the book in her hand and smiled, ask away. Yi Xian looked at the woman, you can kill me, right? The woman nodded, I can indeed kill you, but that's under the premise that no one else interferes. But if I touch you, someone will definitely stop me. Just like now, although it's only the two of us, I can't kill you if I want to. Yi Xian frowned, why? The woman smiled, that's not the point. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, I want to know about the grudges of the older generation. The woman shook her head, I can't tell you. No, I don't want to tell you. Yi Xian looked at the woman, so you're saying that you're determined to kill me? The woman smiled, yes. Yi Xian nodded, I understand. With that, he stood up and left. When he walked to the door, he turned to look at the woman, you've done so much, so it shouldn't be just to use others to kill me, right? The woman smiled, yes. Yi Xian said, the cause of disaster? The woman nodded. Yi Xian nodded slightly, I understand. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Within the bamboo house, the woman's smile gradually vanished. After a long time, she placed her right hand lightly on the chessboard, and in the next moment, the entire chessboard transformed into nothingness. Everything was destroyed. There was no winner. Yi Xian returned to the fifth dimension, and he looked for Bai Dizzy. Within the hall, Yi Xian said in a low voice, investigate those mysterious powers that came looking for me earlier and find out their origins. Bai Dizzy said in a low voice, I've already sent people to investigate before you left. However, there's no news. Yi Xian said softly, then they should be quite far away from us. Bai Dizzy nodded, I've already asked Black City for help, and they've agreed. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, you must do it secretly. Otherwise, you might implicate them. Bai Dizzy nodded slightly, I understand. As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment before he said, do you know who's behind this? Yi Xian nodded. I do. Bai Dizzy fell silent for a moment before he said, no matter what, be careful. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Bai Dizzy was about to speak when a figure suddenly appeared within the hall. Yi Xian looked at the figure, and the figure bowed slightly to Yi Xian before leaving behind a scroll and vanishing. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the scroll appeared in his hand. He opened it, and there were only 4 words on it, Divine City, Northern Wilderness. Divine City? Northern Wilderness? Yi Xian exerted some force with his right hand, and the scroll vanished. The mysterious power from before was from the Northern Wilderness. That woman was obviously using the Northern Wilderness. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, I'm going out for a while. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Northern Wilderness. Biyao knelt devoutly in front of the stone tablet, and behind him were dozens of super overlords. These people had all surpassed the immortal state. At this moment, all of them were kneeling in front of the stone tablet. After an unknown period of time, the stone tablet trembled slightly, and in the next moment, a woman walked out of it. The woman only wore a black tube top, and most of her skin was exposed to the air. She only wore a very short leather skirt, and her legs were as white as jade. After the woman appeared, she slowly closed her eyes, and Biyao and the others in front of her hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Greetings, divine envoy." The woman gently hooked her finger, and a black gauze suddenly appeared on her body, which made her look even sexier. After a while, the woman suddenly opened her eyes, and her gaze pierced through the starry sky, directly to the sacred region. Inside the bamboo house, the mysterious woman who was reading a book suddenly opened her eyes. She turned her head to take a look and said with a smile, "Interesting. It seems that I've underestimated this prehistoric civilization. Northern wilderness." The divine envoy opened her palm, and a machete suddenly appeared in her hand. In the next moment, she lightly slashed in front of her. Whoosh! The space in front of her cracked, and almost at the same time, in the bamboo house in the sacred region, the space in front of the mysterious woman suddenly cracked, and a black blade flashed out. The mysterious woman's expression was calm, and she lightly pointed with her fingers. Boom! The blade shook violently, and then slowly turned into nothingness. The divine envoy swung the blade again. Whoosh! A blade suddenly appeared between the mysterious woman's eyebrows, but the blade stopped half an inch away from the mysterious woman's eyebrows. This was because the mysterious woman's jade-like fingers had caught the blade. The mysterious woman gently pinched the blade with her fingers, and the blade turned into nothingness. Then, she lightly pointed forward. In the sacred region, the space in front of the divine envoy suddenly cracked, and a finger shot out. The divine envoy's expression was calm. She opened her palm, and countless blade auras flew out of it. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In an instant, the finger was directly cut into powder. In the sacred region, inside the bamboo house, the woman smiled and did not attack again. In the northern wilderness, the divine envoy also did not attack again. Several blade auras flew around her. Biyao hesitated, and then asked, "Divine envoy?" The divine envoy said softly, "Very strong. Very strong." Hearing this, Biyao's expression became serious. The divine envoy slowly closed her eyes. This woman forced her way into the northern wilderness, took those souls, and bullied the northern wilderness. Just for that young man Yixian? Biyao nodded. Yes. That young man has already absorbed those souls. Then, she paused, and then said, "That young man is not simple, especially his body, which is extremely powerful, and his bloodline has extremely strong healing abilities." The divine envoy was expressionless. "I'll go and see this person. You guys wait here for the underworld envoy." Underworld envoy. Hearing this, Biyao's heart jumped, and he quickly nodded. Yes. The divine envoy did not speak again. She took a step forward, and with that, she disappeared from the northern wilderness. Chapter 1489. In the starry sky, Yi Xian rode on his flying sword. After a long time, he arrived at the God City. Just as he was about to step into the God City, a powerful divine sense suddenly enveloped him. Yi Xian frowned slightly. At this moment, that divine sense suddenly disappeared without a trace. Yi Xian was slightly startled. A moment later, he continued forward. There was only a small tavern in the city. The small tavern was very new, as if it had just been built. Yi Xian walked into the tavern. Inside the tavern, there were only two people. One was the tavern manager, and the other was a waiter. At this moment, both of them were looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was a little baffled by their gazes. He asked, "Do the two of you know me?" The waiter looked at the manager. The manager waved his hand and the waiter retreated. The manager looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Do you want a drink? The best wine here is Spring Sword." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said with a smile, "I'll have a pot." The manager smiled and said, "Please sit." Yi Xian walked to the side and sat down. The manager immediately brought over a pot of wine and two side dishes. Just as the manager was about to leave, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Let's have a chat." The manager hesitated for a moment before nodding, sure. He sat in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior knows me." The manager smiled, "Why do you say so?" Yi Xian said, "When I first came in, the way you looked at me." The manager was silent. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "I'll be more direct. Are you in cahoots with that woman?" The manager seemed to know who Yi Xian was talking about. He immediately shook his head, "No. No." Yi Xian asked again, "Do you know me?" The manager nodded, "My master knows you." Yi Xian was a little curious, "Your master? Can I meet him?" The manager shook his head. "It's not convenient for the time being." Yi Xian smiled and asked, "Why?" The manager hesitated for a moment before he said, "Young Master Yi, your true objective for coming here this time is for that woman, right?" Yi Xian nodded. The innkeeper sighed in a low voice. "Young Master Yi, to be honest, that woman also came to the tavern, and we couldn't do anything to her." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian smiled and said, "Then I'll ask about the northern wilderness." Northern wilderness. The shopkeeper said, "We know a little about Dao Yi. The northern wilderness is a prehistoric civilization, a civilization before the Tao scripture. Their cultivation system is completely different from ours. Their cultivation system is also different. Moreover, they also cultivate faith energy, but it's different from ours. Moreover, some of their cultivation methods are very special. For example, they cultivate psychokinesis, which we know nothing about. Apart from that, they also cultivate underworld energy, a special kind of power." As he said this, his expression became serious. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "To tell you the truth, that woman must have gone to the desolate north. Then she brought out the souls of some of the desolate north's powerhouses and let me absorb them." The innkeeper looked at Yi Xian and asked, "You absorbed them?" Yi Xian shrugged. "She forced me to absorb them." The innkeeper said in a deep voice, "She wants to make the northern wilderness your enemy." Yi Xian nodded. After a moment of silence, the innkeeper said, "What are you going to do?" Yi Xian said, "I want to go to the northern wilderness and clear up this misunderstanding. But I'm afraid I won't be able to return. They are not only strong, but they also have a lot of people." The innkeeper hesitated and said, "You absorbed all the souls?" Yi Xian nodded. The innkeeper sighed again. "That's not a simple problem." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "I'm not particularly worried about the northern wilderness. I'm worried about that woman. My intuition tells me that she's plotting something." The innkeeper nodded. "Master also said that she's plotting something. It's not just to cause trouble for you. It might have something to do with the cause of misfortune on you." Yi Xian nodded. "My guess is also the cause of misfortune. But I don't know the specifics." The innkeeper glanced at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, you can't fight her alone. Master suggests that you find someone from the older generation." Yi Xian shrugged. "I can't find anyone. By the way, can you help me contact Qing? The innkeeper asked. "The woman in the plain dress?" Yi Xian nodded. The innkeeper shook his head. "No." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" The innkeeper said in a deep voice, "Young Master Yi, Master also doesn't suggest that you let that senior come back. Because if she comes back, things will become more complicated. Also, your aunt's target might be the woman in the plain dress." Yi Xian frowned. "Kill Qing? The innkeeper shook his head. "She doesn't have that ability. She might be plotting against you and the woman in the plain dress. The only thing that can restrain the woman in the plain dress is the cause of misfortune." So. When he spoke up to hear, he sighed softly. "Actually, Master isn't too sure about her true objective. The only thing I know is that it's related to the disaster cause. Because if she wants to kill you, she can only rely on the disaster cause." Yi Xian suddenly asked. "Can I see your master?" The innkeeper shook his head. "Master can't see you. Please understand. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Let's talk about the northern wilderness. The northern wilderness now sees me as their mortal enemy. Although I tricked them into leaving, I believe that they will definitely come back soon. The innkeeper suddenly said. Go find Miss Ding. Miss Ding? Yi Xian blinked. Who is it? The innkeeper took out a scroll and placed it in front of Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, take care. Then, he got up and left. Yi Xian was silent for a long time. He picked up the scroll and left. Not long after, he suddenly turned around. Not far away, the tavern suddenly burst into flames. Soon, the entire tavern turned into nothingness. Yi Xian said softly. I'm sorry. I didn't know I would implicate you. Thank you. Then, he turned around and left. In the starry sky, Yi Xian opened the scroll. It was actually a map. Miss Ding? Yi Xian was curious. Who was this Miss Ding that the tavern senior mentioned? Would he implicate her if he went to find her? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian finally chose to find this Miss Ding. Otherwise, who knew what would happen if he allowed that woman to continue? He really couldn't beat her. Even now, he still didn't know how strong that woman was. Since it was a grudge between the older generation, it was better to let the older generation solve it themselves. I won't take the blame. In the fifth dimension. On this day, a woman suddenly arrived in the starry sky of the fifth dimension. It was the divine envoy. The divine envoy stood in the starry sky and looked down at the fifth dimension. After a long time, a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. This universe is a bit interesting. Then, she suddenly turned around. Not far away, there stood a little girl. Mu Niannian. The divine envoy looked at Mu Niannian. After a while, she looked at the candied fruit in Mu Niannian's hand and said softly. You are very strong. Mu Niannian said, the northern wilderness? The divine envoy nodded. Mu Niannian said with a smile, want to talk? The divine envoy looked at Mu Niannian's candied fruit and asked, is there a need to talk? Mu Niannian smiled slightly. That woman is using you. The divine envoy looked calm. That woman wants to use us to target that young man? Mu Niannian said with a smile, it seems that I can save my breath. However, I am a bit curious. How did you know? Or is it just a guess? The divine envoy slowly clenched her right hand that was hidden behind her back. I have fought with her. She is very strong. It is meaningless for such a strong person to snatch those souls. Those treasures are also meaningless to her. Then, there are only two possibilities left. First, she is really doing it for that young man. Second, she is framing that young man and wants the northern wilderness to become enemies with that young man. Then, she looked down. This time, I came to see that young man and this universe. This universe is not simple. You are very strong. However, you are a bit strange. You are in a very strange state now. Mu Niannian said with a smile, strange state? The divine envoy nodded. There seems to be something bothering you. Mu Niannian smiled. The cause of misfortune. The divine envoy frowned. The cause of misfortune? Mu Niannian asked, there is no cause of misfortune in your era? The divine envoy said softly, you are talking about the body of misfortune. Mu Niannian was a bit curious. The body of misfortune? The divine emissary nodded. The cause of disaster you mentioned should be what we call the body of disaster, the source of all evil karma. However, this kind of person has never appeared even in our era. In our era, there was a good body. As for this body of disaster, not only did it not appear in our era, it did not even appear in the most ancient era. Mu Niannian licked the candied fruit and said, do you have a way to solve this body of misfortune? The divine envoy looked at Mu Niannian's candied fruit again. Yes. Mu Niannian blinked. There is? The divine envoy said, the body of misfortune cannot be directly erased or changed, but it can be reversed, forcibly reversed. Mu Nianyan asked, how do you reverse it? The divine envoy looked at Mu Nianyan. Become stronger. So strong that no karma can touch you. Mu Nianyan was silent. Wasn't she talking about the woman in the plain dress? That woman was the one who no karma dared to touch. But it was still very difficult for Yi Xian to reach the level of the woman in the plain dress, at least not in a short time. At this moment, the divine envoy suddenly said, that young man can live until now with the body of misfortune is because someone is blocking the source of the body of misfortune for him, right? Mu Nianyan nodded. Yes. The divine envoy frowned slightly. Someone can do that? Mu Nianyan smiled. Yes. The divine envoy shook his head. Impossible. This cause of misfortune is simply. No, you have no reason to lie to me. Moreover, that young man is indeed still alive. Mu Nianyan licked the candied fruit and smiled. It was good to talk to smart people because you didn't have to explain too much nonsense. At this moment, the divine envoy suddenly asked, what are you licking? Mu Nianyan smiled. Candied fruit. The divine envoy hesitated. It looks delicious. Can I lick it? Mu Nianyan blinked and said, This is a divine item. It blooms every 10,000 years and bears fruit every 10,000 years. Look at this string of mine, there are 6 of them. They have been bearing fruit for 60,000 years. The divine envoy. Chapter 1490. 60,000 years old. The saint blinked. Really? Mu Nianyan said seriously, of course. However, I can give you a skewer. With that, she took out a skewer of candied haws and handed it to the saint. The saint hesitated for a moment before taking the candied haws. She licked it gently. It was a little sweet and sour, but there was no spiritual energy or energy. She looked at Mu Nianyan and asked, why doesn't this thing have any energy or spiritual energy? Nian blinked, feeling a little awkward. How was she going to fool him? Fortunately, the saint did not continue to ask this question. She licked it again and said, this thing is sour and sweet. There's an indescribable feeling when you lick it. Mu Nianyan smiled and said, delicious, right? The saint nodded. Indeed. With that, she glanced at Mu Nianyan and said, I can't take it from you for free. When she spoke up to hear, she opened her palm to reveal a pure white spirit fruit. As soon as it appeared, a wave of pure spiritual energy instantly spread out from her palm. Nian blinked. This is? The saint said, my clan's sacred fruit. It blooms every 10,000 years and bears fruit every 10,000 years. After eating, it can cleanse the marrow and nourish the limbs and bones. Most importantly, it tastes good and delicious. Nian looked at the saint. Is it for me? The saint nodded. Yes. Nian smiled and said, actually, this candied haw isn't that precious. The saint nodded. I know. This thing should be some snacks of this era, right? Nian nodded. Yes. The saint smiled slightly. No matter what, I ate your candied haw and I don't like to owe others, so you can keep it. Nian shook her head. You have your principles and I have mine. Just give me a skewer of candied haw in the future. The saint thought for a moment and said, that's fine too. Nian smiled and said, let's talk about that woman. Are you interested? The saint nodded. Yes. Nian smiled and said, you already know the truth. What are you going to do now? The saint shook his head. I don't know how strong she is, and I don't know what she will do next. As she said that, she looked at Mu Nianyan. Because you're affected by the disaster constitution, you can't attack openly, right? Nian nodded. Yes. The divine envoy said softly, then things will be a bit tricky. Nian said, if I'm not wrong, she should have a backup plan, but we don't know what this backup plan is for now. Most importantly, you've already seen through her scheme. I'm worried that she has already anticipated this and has a backup plan. The saint nodded slightly. That's what I'm worried about. As she spoke, she shook her head. I wanted to talk to her, but she didn't want to. Nian Nian blinked. Why don't we join forces? The saint was silent. Nian Nian asked, are you worried about the body of disaster? The sage nodded. Yes. Nian Nian smiled and said, she killed many of your people. The saint looked at Nian Nian. But if we continue to be enemies with her without knowing her true strength, we might lose more people. Moreover, her real intention is to target you. My clan doesn't want to get involved in this mess for now. Nian Nian nodded. I understand. However, you guys still have to be careful. She probably won't let this go. The saint nodded. Thank you for the reminder. As she said that, she licked the candied fruit and said, I still have something to do. We'll talk another day. With that, she turned and left. Nian Nian looked at the saint in the distance and remained silent. What will that woman do next? Somewhere in the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. He didn't know where he was going because he was following the map. Miss Ding. He was also curious about this Miss Ding. The tavern owner had asked him to look for her. She should be able to restrain that woman, right? At this moment, the space not far away from him suddenly trembled. Yi Xian frowned slightly and clenched his right hand tightly. He clenched the sword in his hand because he felt a murderous intent. A murderous intent that came out of nowhere. At this moment, the murderous intent suddenly disappeared. The next moment, the space split open and a woman walked out. It was the mysterious woman from the sacred land. Yi Xian looked at the woman in silence. The woman said with a smile, are you going to look for help? Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. No. I'm just strolling around. The woman laughed and said, I like to see you lie with your eyes wide open. It's really interesting. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman said with a smile, go back. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Are you afraid that I'll look for that person? The woman shook her head. I'm not afraid because she can't do anything to me. However, with her around, it'll be a little troublesome to carry out many of my plans because she knows me better than Miss Nian and knows more than Miss Nian. Yi Xian was silent. The woman looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, are you going back yourself, or do you want me to beat you up? Yi Xian looked at the woman. How about a spar? The woman said with a smile, are you serious? Yi Xian nodded. I'm serious. It's a spar, the kind where we stop when it's appropriate. The woman laughed. Stop when it's appropriate. Since you want to know my strength, then come. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from the spot. Chi. The space in front of the woman suddenly tore open and a sword beam appeared an inch away from the woman's eyebrows. Instant kill sword. Extreme instant kill sword. However, such a fast sword was caught by 2 fingers. The woman held on to Yi Xian's sword and smiled. A very fast sword. However, even Tingyun can't do anything to me with this sword, let alone you. As she said that, her fingers trembled slightly. Boom! Yi Xian and his sword were sent flying hundreds of feet away. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Again. Yi Xian looked at the woman. The next moment, he suddenly appeared in front of the woman. Immediately after, 4 types of domains enveloped the woman. At the same time, he held the sword with both hands and slashed forward. He used all his strength in this sword. Of course, it lacked the crazy demon bloodline power. Even so, the power of this sword was enough to destroy heaven and earth. However, even with the support of 4 types of domains, this sword was still caught by the woman's 2 fingers. The woman's 2 fingers trembled slightly. Boom! Yi Xian's 4 types of domains were directly shattered. At the same time, he was sent flying hundreds of feet away. Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand in silence. He was crushed. This woman's strength was far above his. Even if he used the power of faith, he might not be able to do anything to this woman. The woman sized up Yi Xian. 4 types of domains. It's quite rare. However, it's a pity that your 4 types of domains are of a low level. You haven't grasped the true essence of domains. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Low level? The woman nodded and smiled. You can't really think that domains are so trashy, right? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Are domains very strong? The woman smiled. Of course. Although you have 4 types of domains, you haven't grasped the essence of domains. Therefore, your power is mediocre. Yi Xian said in a low voice. How can I display the true power of this domain? The woman blinked. Are you asking me? Yi Xian, the woman smiled. I won't tell you. Otherwise, if you're too strong, you'll only make things difficult for me. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Are you afraid that I'll become stronger? The woman smiled. If you want to be a threat to me, you'll need at least 30 years, or even longer. Therefore, within 30 years, it doesn't matter how you jump around. However, I can't take the initiative to help you improve. Isn't that looking for trouble for myself? Yi Xian was silent. The woman smiled. Don't worry. I won't target the people around you. I won't use your relatives to threaten you. You can rest assured. Yi Xian glanced at the woman. In that case, I should be thanking you. The woman smiled. I can understand you. After all, it's a grudge of the older generation. You have to take the blame. But there's no other way. This matter has something to do with you. Moreover, I really can't beat the older generation. I can only beat you. Yi Xian looked calm. You're really straightforward. Speaking of which, I'm curious. Do you have some kind of blood feud with my mother? The woman smiled. Sort of. Yi Xian frowned. You're sisters. Is there such a big grudge? The woman shook her head. I can't tell you about this. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. He asked again. I heard from a senior that my grandfather was killed. The woman nodded. Yes. Yi Xian continued to ask. My father did it? The woman nodded. Your grandfather's death. I can only say that he deserved it. Although it's a bit unfilial to say this, he has done too many evil things. Moreover, when you were born, he wanted to kill you. Yi Xian was stunned. My grandfather wanted to kill me? The woman nodded. Yes. Yi Xian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Damn it. It's not easy for me to live until now. The woman suddenly smiled. Let's go back. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Can we make an agreement? The woman smiled. Let's hear it. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. No matter what happens in the future, don't make a move on the 5th dimension. Don't make a move on the people around me. Of course, I won't make the 5th dimension and the people around you your enemy. This is a grudge between the two of us. What do you think? The woman smiled. Sure. However, I won't make a move on the 5th dimension. I won't show mercy to some people from the older generation who helped you. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Okay. After saying that, he turned around and left. Not long after Yi Xian left, a shadow quietly appeared behind the woman. The shadow gradually solidified. It was a woman wearing an emerald green dress. There were some leaf-like things on the woman's head. It looked quite strange. The woman who had just appeared stared at Yi Xian at the end of the starry sky in the distance. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. The mysterious woman suddenly smiled. You can't just kill him like that. Do you understand? Moreover, what's the point of killing him? After all, the person you want to kill is Tianming. The woman in the emerald green dress was expressionless. If I kill him, that woman will definitely be in pain, right? The mysterious woman smiled. And then? Then she will end you with a sword? Also, we can't kill him now. Don't underestimate that Miss Nian Nian. The woman in the emerald green dress was silent. The mysterious woman suddenly said, "How's the contact going?" The woman in the emerald green dress said solemnly, "I've already contacted some people. However, most of them don't dare to participate in this matter because they fear Tianming." As she said that, she looked at the mysterious woman. "How do you plan to deal with that man and that woman?" The mysterious woman raised her head to look at the end of the starry sky and said softly, "Our appearance is the best chance for this disaster cause. I don't believe it won't seize this opportunity. This disaster cause will definitely help us. If I'm not wrong, this disaster cause is about to make a move." In a certain part of the starry sky, a woman was walking slowly. It was the woman in the white dress. At that moment, the woman in the white dress suddenly stopped. The blood-red threads around her suddenly trembled violently. They surrounded the woman in the white dress like a huge ball, wrapping around her. However, it was very difficult for them to approach her. At the same time, the space in front of the woman suddenly turned blood-red. Within that blood-red space, there was a blood-red door. The woman in the white dress slowly closed her eyes. After a long while, she turned her head to take a look and sneered. "You're playing with me? If it weren't for the fact that you're his mother, I would have ended you with my sword long ago. You don't even recognize your own son. What the hell?" After saying that, she walked towards the blood-red door. P.S. Updated 1 minute late, one more chapter. Chapter 1491. As the plain-dressed woman walked towards the blood-red door, the starry sky around her had already turned blood-red. The entire starry sky was like a sea of blood. It was extremely strange. The plain-dressed woman walked slowly. Her expression was calm as the number of blood-red threads around her increased. When she reached the blood-red door, those blood-red threads had already covered the entire starry sky. If someone was here, they would definitely be scared to death. This was too terrifying. Karmic threads. Endless karmic threads of disaster. These karmic threads of disaster should be on Yi Xian's body. However, they had been shouldered by the plain-dressed woman. Of course, these karmic threads of disaster couldn't do anything to her. However, she couldn't sever them all because new threads would appear even if she severed them. Therefore, she didn't sever them all. The plain-dressed woman walked towards the blood-red door. Behind the door was a long blood-red path that seemed to have no end. When she entered the blood-red door, she suddenly turned her head to look at the karmic threads of disaster. She could see countless things from these karmic threads of disaster. Many of the karmic threads of disaster were related to her and the green-robed man. However, there were also some that didn't belong to her and the green-robed man. They belonged to Yi Xian himself. The degree of terror of these karmic threads of disaster wasn't any less than the ones she and the green-robed man had. Everyone had a past life, present life, and a future life. However, when a person's strength reached a certain level, they could sever their past life and future life. The green-robed man had done it. She had also done it. She wouldn't be tainted by any karma. She would be herself. However, Yi Xian couldn't do it. What was she really worried about? She was worried that Yi Xian's past life would determine his present life. Some powerful people could be reborn after reaching a certain level. Moreover, they could control their own rebirth. After such people were reborn, they would gradually regain their past life's memories. If they were strong enough in their present life, they might be able to maintain their current state. However, if they weren't strong enough, they might become their past life's self. Was there a difference? There was definitely a difference. Because once the past life's memories were restored, the person at that time would no longer be him. The reason why Yi Xian was still himself now was because she had blocked everything from his previous life. All the karmic threads from his previous life had basically landed on her. Of course, this was only her guess. She was not sure if it was Yi Xian's doing in his previous life, or if someone else was doing it, or if he was doing it himself, or if someone was helping him. Regardless of the reason, she was certain that Yi Xian's identity was not simple. In fact, it was becoming more and more complicated. Before this, what gave her a headache was that the disaster cause had been lurking in the dark, leaving her powerless. But now, the cause of disaster could no longer hold back. When she thought up to here, the woman in a plain dress put away the wooden doll, and then she turned around to glance below. At this glance, she directly saw the mysterious woman from the hallowed grounds, and she had an expressionless face. A bunch of ants. If it wasn't for the fact that you're his mother, would have killed you a long time ago. Are you even worthy of showing off your intelligence? After saying that, she entered the blood-red door. In fact, the mysterious woman from the hallowed grounds did not know that the woman in a plain dress wanted to make a move against the disaster cause even more than she did. If the disaster cause did not make a move and kept hiding, she really could not do anything to it. But if the disaster cause made a move and let her know where the disaster cause was, then it would be different. After the woman in a plain dress disappeared, the blood-red door and the starry sky slowly became illusory. After a while, it disappeared, and the surrounding starry sky also returned to normal. In the hallowed grounds, the mysterious woman in the bamboo house suddenly raised her head. After being silent for a long time, she softly said, "No, they might not have gone far. We have to wait a little longer. We can't rush." After saying that, she lowered her head and continued to read the ancient book. At this moment, the sacred master's voice came from outside the door. "Master, the people from the desolate north have already gone to the fifth dimension." The woman nodded. "I know." The sacred master hesitated for a moment, then said, "Will the desolate north ally with the fifth dimension?" The woman shook her head. "They wouldn't dare." The sacred master was somewhat puzzled. "Why?" The woman smiled and said, "They won't want to get involved in this mess." The sacred master said in a deep voice, "But if they know that this is a conspiracy of yours, master," the woman shook her head and smiled. "As long as Yi Xian absorbs those souls, it will be fine. Those souls are evil causes. Although I forced him to absorb them, he still benefited from it. As for the desolate north, the sacred envoy doesn't represent the entire desolate north. Moreover, as long as there are enough benefits, the desolate north will kill Yi Xian." Although the sacred master still had some doubts in his heart, he didn't ask anymore. Instead, he quietly retreated. Outside the bamboo forest, the sacred master sighed. He knew that his master must have some big plan. Recently, some extremely powerful auras appeared in the hallowed grounds. However, he didn't know who these people were, and he didn't dare to ask. Yi Xian returned to the fifth dimension. Somewhere in the cultivation room, Yi Xian opened his right hand and slowly clenched it. In an instant, a powerful force condensed in his right hand. Life Fist. He had to admit that the power of this life fist was very powerful. However, he knew that even if he burned 1,000 years of his life, the life fist would not be able to do anything to that woman. Yi Xian slowly loosened his right hand. This was the first time he felt so powerless. Although he had many enemies in the past, and they were all powerful, they were completely incomparable to this mysterious woman. Now, he felt that the woman was in control of everything. The biggest disadvantage was that the woman knew everything about him, while he didn't know much about her. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly opened his hands, and a mysterious force suddenly overflowed from his body. The power of faith. At this moment, his power of faith was unprecedentedly powerful. This was because it could be said that he had gathered the power of faith of the entire fifth dimension. Moreover, this power of faith was very pure. It could be said that this power of faith would increase his strength to an extremely terrifying level. However, his use of the power of faith was very simple and crude. That was to use it to forcibly increase his own strength. Domain. Yi Xian suddenly displayed his sword domain. His sword domain directly enveloped the entire cultivation room. After the sword domain appeared, he crazily released his power of faith. Endless power of faith entered his sword domain. Excitement gradually appeared in Yi Xian's eyes. Because he noticed that the sword domain was actually undergoing a transformation when the power of faith entered it. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Condense." As soon as he finished speaking, a sword suddenly appeared in his hand. It was an illusory sword. It was a sword condensed from the power of faith he'd condensed. Yi Xian held the sword in his hand and slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, his sword domain had undergone a tremendous transformation. The sword domain that was supported by the power of faith and the sword Dao Yi was countless times stronger than his original sword domain. Moreover, he was able to increase the effects of the power of faith to its limits within this sword domain. Moreover, he could even utilize this sword domain to improve the might of his sword Dao. The power of faith could strengthen the sword domain, and the sword domain could strengthen his sword Dao. Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. He looked into the distance with the sword of faith in his hand. At this moment, he really wanted to slash out. The power of this sword would definitely destroy the world. However, this was the fifth dimension. Naturally, he couldn't use his sword. If he did, it would severely damage the origin of the fifth dimension. Yi Xian put away his sword and continued to ponder the power of faith and sword domain. He originally wanted to rush to the consolidation realm. However, he felt that he should stabilize his current realm. After all, he'd just reached the Dao attainment realm not long ago. As for his physical body, it hadn't been long since he'd reached the consolidation realm. It would be very difficult to improve it again. Since he couldn't improve his realm and physical body, he would improve his sword Dao and sword domain. Especially the sword domain. He didn't know when it started, but he rarely used it. Against ordinary enemies, he didn't even need to use the sword domain. He could instantly kill them with one strike. However, against some enemies, the sword domain was completely useless. For example, against that mysterious woman, the sword domain was completely useless. And that woman's words made him understand that it wasn't that the sword domain was weak, but that he hadn't developed it yet. In the following time, Yi Xian began to study the sword domain and the power of faith. Not only that, but he also studied the sword of instant death. With the blessing of the sword domain and the power of faith, the power of the sword of instant death could also be greatly enhanced. Especially in the space covered by the sword domain, the speed of the sword of instant death was already indescribable. It could be said that the speed was so fast that even he couldn't resist it. The power of faith and sword domain allowed Yi Xian to discover a new continent. In the blink of an eye, 1 month passed. During this month, Yi Xian hid in the cultivation room every day. As for the matters of the fifth dimension, he was relieved that Bai Dizzy and the others were handling it. Moreover, Bai Dizzy and the others didn't disturb him. Apart from cultivating, Yi Xian had been reading books for the past month. He read the ancient books that Nian Nian had collected. Not only that, he also asked Bai Dizzy to collect all the books related to the sword path in the fifth dimension, especially those from the sword sect. Just as the white-robed Qing said, his current sword path had reached its end. He could only walk the next path by himself. However, if he wanted to walk his own path, learning was indispensable. He wanted to improve his attainments in the sword Dao to the next level. During this time, there was no movement from the sacred domain. On this day, the sacred master came to the bamboo house. The sacred master glanced inside the bamboo house and saw that there were 2 women inside. The sacred master bowed slightly. "Master, that Yi Xian seems to be cultivating crazily." The mysterious woman said with a smile, "Let him be." The sacred master hesitated for a moment and then said, "Master, aren't you worried?" The mysterious woman said, "You can leave." The sacred master didn't dare to say anything else and immediately left. Inside the bamboo house, the mysterious woman looked at the woman in front of her. The woman was wearing an emerald green dress and there were a few broken leaves in her hair. The mysterious woman said with a smile, "Tree Boundless, you are too anxious." Tree Boundless' expression was cold. She has already left. Are you still not going to act? The mysterious woman shook her head. Not enough, because I can still feel a trace of her aura. Tree Boundless suddenly asked, what if she comes back? The mysterious woman was silent. Tree Boundless looked at the woman. You have thought about this problem, right? The mysterious woman said softly, she will not come back. Tree Boundless frowned slightly. Why? The mysterious woman said with a smile, in her eyes, you and I are both ants. Chapter 1492. Ants. Tree Boundless was silent. How strong was that woman? She had personally experienced it. So strong that it made people feel despair. In this world, who could suppress the plain-dressed woman? No one. Even the green-robed man could only fight against the plain-dressed woman, but if the plain-dressed woman went crazy, the green-robed man could not stop her. In the eyes of that woman, apart from a few people, who was not an ant? In front of Tree Boundless, the mysterious woman suddenly smiled and said, of course, if she comes back, it is also a good thing. Tree Boundless looked at the mysterious woman and asked, what do you mean? The mysterious woman smiled and said, the reason why Yi Xian can live so comfortably now is because she is at the front. If she returns to Yi Xian's side, who will be at the front? Of course, she can always stay by Yi Xian's side, but if she stays by Yi Xian's side, Yi Xian will never be able to grow. The path of the Great Tao is walked by oneself. This is also the reason why she left Yi Xian, because she wants Yi Xian to grow on his own. Saying that, she shook her head and smiled. In her heart, the enemies of this universe, including us, are all Yi Xian's whetstones. Tree Boundless' expression was somewhat cold, she is so confident. The mysterious woman said softly, she is indeed very confident, but she has the strength. Saying that, she turned to look at the horizon. I hope that the cause of disaster is not so weak, otherwise, how can others play with it? Tree Boundless asked, in your opinion, does the cause of disaster have a chance of winning? The mysterious woman nodded, yes. Tree Boundless asked, why do you think so? The mysterious woman said softly, that's because the two of them weren't able to stop this disaster cause back then. You have to understand that whether it's the azure-clothed man or the plain-dressed woman, they can only destroy, but they can't create. This disaster cause is far, far too deep. Most importantly, if the source of this cause of disaster is Yi Xian himself, then this matter will be too interesting. At that time, should she kill or not? The reason why she hasn't forcefully cut off the cause of calamity on Yi Xian is also because of this. Tree Boundless asked solemnly, what do you plan to do next? The mysterious woman raised the teacup and took a light sip, and then she said softly, wait. Tree Boundless frowned. How much longer do we have to wait? The mysterious woman smiled and said, we've waited for so many years. There's no need to rush, right? Tree Boundless was silent. The mysterious woman suddenly asked, how's the contact? Tree Boundless said calmly, your seduction worked. More and more people join us. However, you have to remember one thing. If that woman or that man comes back, everything we've done will be meaningless. The mysterious woman nodded, even if that man wanted to come back, he wouldn't be able to do so immediately. What we really need to be careful of is slaughtering them. Tree Boundless nodded. As long as that woman doesn't come back. At this point, she suddenly looked at the mysterious woman. By the way, what level have you reached? Why can't I sense your realm? The mysterious woman smiled slightly, we're not enemies, you don't need to worry. Tree Boundless said calmly, I'm just curious. The mysterious woman smiled and said, a little higher than you think. Tree Boundless frowned slightly, but she didn't ask any more questions. At this time, the mysterious woman suddenly said, we have to be careful of someone. Tree Boundless asked, who? The mysterious woman dipped her finger into the tea, and then wrote a name on the table. Tree Boundless frowned slightly. He's here? The mysterious woman nodded. He should be here. Tree Boundless said, I'll deal with him. The mysterious woman smiled and said, no, you have to deal with something else. Tree Boundless looked at the mysterious woman. Tell me your plan. The mysterious woman said softly, when that woman is a little further away, when I can't sense her, we'll make the disaster cause on Yi Xian materialize. At that time, besides the 3 swords, whoever helps him will suffer the wrath of heaven. Tree Boundless said, all right. Saying so, she stood up and left. The mysterious woman looked at the teacup in front of her, and after a long time, she said softly, even if I'm an ant trying to shake a tree, I still want to try. Saying so, she took out a white silk handkerchief, and on the handkerchief, there was a small footprint. Looking at the handkerchief in her hand, a trace of pain flashed in her eyes. Why should you die? Why? Because he has an invincible little sister? Don't worry, I'll make him pay the price. Those were her son's footprints. However, she had never even seen her son's face. That was because the calamity had descended upon her, and her soul had almost been destroyed. When she had woken up, only one of her 2 children was left. No, at that time, there was another person, and that was Tian Ming. After recalling the past, the killing intent in the mysterious woman's eyes became more and more ferocious. In the 5-dimensional universe, Yi Xian didn't pay attention to the outside world, and every day, he only focused on cultivating. The current him had perfectly fused the sword domain and the power of faith. The power of faith supported the sword domain, and the sword domain supported the way of the sword. With the perfect combination of the 2 powers, it could be said that his current sword domain was completely different from before. Apart from that, he had also developed the blood domain. The combination of bloodline power and the blood domain. He found that his bloodline power could greatly increase his blood domain, and it could make his blood reach a qualitative change. The most important thing in the blood domain was blood. Before this, he had actually neglected this problem. The blood domain, of course, needed blood. The only pity was that he couldn't activate the crazy demon bloodline, because the crazy demon bloodline's destructive power was stronger than the immortal bloodline. If the crazy demon bloodline was combined with the blood domain, the power of the blood domain would become even stronger. Apart from that, he found that when he used the blood domain, the more blood there was, the stronger the blood domain would become. In addition, the death domain needed death chi. A death domain with death chi and a death domain without death chi were 2 completely different domains. However, the power of the death domain couldn't be compared to the blood domain and the sword domain, because he didn't have too much death chi. Unless he killed too many people and used millions of Yin spirits and death chi to stabilize the domain. However, this situation was very rare. As for the dark domain, he found that the power of the dark domain would be greatly enhanced in the shattered space. He could use all kinds of dark matter to strengthen the dark domain. It should be said that when he used the dark domain, he could use the dark domain to forcibly absorb all the dark matter energy in the surroundings. How much dark matter energy was there between heaven and earth? Especially in the starry sky, the dark matter energy could be said to be endless. In short, in the past month or so, Yi Xian had gained a lot, especially in the use of the 4 domains. In this aspect, he had improved a lot. Now, the 4 domains were no longer useless to him, but a great killer move. Inside the hall, Yi Xian and Enlancio sat facing each other. During this period of time, Enlancio had always been with him, and the 2 of them were discussing. Moreover, he had already imparted Life Fist to Enlancio. What made him a little dumbfounded was that even if Enlancio didn't have a powerful body, she could still cultivate the Life Fist. However, her Life Fist was different from his. Moreover, she didn't burn her lifespan. Rather than saying that she cultivated the Life Fist, it would be better to say that she was drawing on the Life Fist. In this aspect of the martial Tao, Enlancio's talent was really too terrifying. Enlancio looked at Yi Xian. You want to change the Life Fist into the Life Sword? Yi Xian nodded, yes. I had this idea a long time ago. The Life Fist's power is extremely strong. If it can be fused with my instant kill sword, then its power will definitely reach a very terrifying level. And Lanxiu said in a deep voice, difficult. And Lanxiu said in a deep voice, difficult. Yi Xian smiled, I know. What was the instant kill sword particular about? It was speed and that instant of explosive force. The Life Fist was also particular about explosive force. If these two types of explosive force could be fused together, then the might would absolutely be able to destroy the heavens and the earth. However, this was extremely difficult because the might of the Life Fist was too great, and the speed and strength of the instant kill sword had reached a limit. This wasn't a combination of strength and softness, but a fusion of strength and strength. So, the difficulty wasn't ordinary. And Lanxiu suddenly said, however, it isn't impossible. Yi Xian looked at Lanxiu, what do you mean? And Lanxiu looked at Yi Xian, domain. Yi Xian was stunned when he heard this, and then he suddenly came to his senses, right. I can use my domain to suppress these two forces and prevent them from going out of control. And Lanxiu nodded, your faith energy combined with your sword domain should be able to suppress the formidable strength of these two martial techniques. Moreover, your body is sufficiently strong to be able to support these two forces. However, you have to pay attention to the problem after executing this sword strike. If you're directly paralyzed after executing this sword strike, then I feel that such a fusion wouldn't have much meaning. Moreover, after the fusion, if the speed of execution is unable to attain the speed of the instant kill sword, then it would be meaningless as well. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew what Lanxiu meant. No matter if it was researching domains or sword techniques, their imaginary enemy was that mysterious woman. Simply speaking, if he were to face the mysterious woman, then he only had the chance to execute a single sword strike, and this sword strike didn't just have to be swift, it had to be strong as well. In other words, the current speed of the instant kill sword wasn't sufficient. Not only was its speed insufficient, its strength was far from sufficient. Moreover, if he were to fuse the Life Fist with the instant kill sword, then even if his strength was sufficient, it would be useless if his speed wasn't sufficient. Because he might be killed by the mysterious woman at the instant he executed his sword strike. That woman wasn't stupid, and if she sensed danger, then she would absolutely not give him the chance to execute his sword strike. And Lanxiu said, you can give it a try now. Yi Xian nodded, enter the pagoda. As he spoke, he and Lanxiu entered the world prison pagoda. Only by cultivating in the pagoda would he be able to satisfy that mysterious woman. Within the world prison pagoda, Yi Xian stood silently, his right hand grasping the unparalleled sword. His lifespan began to burn, and at the instant he did so, a powerful force suddenly condensed in his right arm, the energy of lifespan. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, continuing to burn his lifespan. In just a moment, he had burned nearly 50 years of his lifespan, and at this moment, the sword in his hand began to tremble violently. Although he was constantly using the sword domain and faith energy to suppress it, this force was truly too strong, and he found it difficult to control. After a long time, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Lanxiu, I can't use my sword. And Lanxiu frowned, you can't use your sword? Yi Xian nodded, his expression solemn, the force is too strong, it has already surpassed my control. And Lanxiu fell silent. Yi Xian sighed softly, feeling slightly regretful, but he didn't intend to give up. If it was so easy to fuse, then it would be too much of a joke. Yi Xian began to slowly release the force. He decided to make it simpler and not burn so much of his lifespan. He would do it bit by bit. Although this would consume a little of his lifespan, if he could fuse it, then it would absolutely be worth it. While Yi Xian was cultivating, the space on the 9th floor suddenly trembled. Yi Xian and Lanxiu who were cultivating suddenly raised their heads to look at the 9th floor. In the next moment, the two of them appeared on the 9th floor, and in the 9th floor, space suddenly split open and a black object floated out. When they saw this object, Yi Xian and Lanxiu were stunned. P.S. Please praise me. Let me be lost in your praises. Chapter 1493. Pagoda. In front of the two of them was a Xiao Ta. This Xiao Ta was different from the world prison pagoda. This Xiao Ta was emitting a purple light, and this purple light was somewhat similar to his purple aura. Yi Xian turned to look at Enlancio. Both of them had a trace of shock in their eyes. There was a Xiao Ta in this pagoda? What was this? At this moment, that Xiao Ta floated in front of Yi Xian. It bounced in front of Yi Xian, as if it was sizing up Yi Xian. Yi Xian hesitated, and asked, "You are?" The Xiao Ta suddenly laughed, "Xiao Ta." Yi Xian's mouth twitched. Damn, this Xiao Ta could speak. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "You seem to be very confused." Yi Xian sized up Xiao Ta, "You are?" Xiao Ta laughed, "I am Xiao Ta." Yi Xian's expression froze. This motherf asterisk her. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly swayed from side to side, as if it was very happy. Yi Xian asked, "Xiao Ta, why are you in this pagoda?" Xiao Ta floated in front of Yi Xian, and said with a smile, "Master placed me here, saying that I should assist you." Yi Xian blinked, "Assist me?" Xiao Ta nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian was a little confused, "Who is your master?" Xiao Ta said, "My master is my master." Yi Xian held his forehead, he was having a headache. At this moment, Enlancio suddenly asked, "What is your master called?" Xiao Ta laughed, "You want to know my master's identity?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Xiao Ta suddenly bounced, "Is there any benefit?" Benefits? Yi Xian and Enlancio were both stunned. This pagoda wanted benefits? Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Of course there must be benefits. Why should I tell you if I won't give you any benefits?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "Didn't I ask you to assist me?" Xiao Ta stopped. "Who said that?" Yi Xian stared at Xiao Ta. "You said it yourself." Xiao Ta quickly shook his head, "No. I never said that. You must have heard wrong." Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Damn it, this guy actually didn't want to admit it? Enlancio's expression was also somewhat odd. Why was this Xiao Ta so flowery? Yi Xian suddenly asked, "What benefits do you want?" Xiao Ta chuckled. "I don't know either. You decide. As long as I like it, it's fine." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said with a smile, "I feel that you definitely won't be interested in ordinary treasures, right?" Small Tower hurriedly nodded. "Of course, you can't use trash to trick me. Let me tell you, I know several hundred ways to trick people. Trying to trick me in front of me, you will only be asking to be humiliated." Yi Xian, at this moment, a sword suddenly flew in front of Yi Xian. Sword Spirit. Yi Xian was just about to speak when Sword Spirit directly slashed at Xiao Ta. Bang! Xiao Ta trembled violently and directly jumped out. Yi Xian, in the distance, Xiao Ta wailed, "Wow, Sister Sword Spirit, you're here too." The Sword Spirit flew back in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian opened his palm and the Sword Spirit landed in his hand. In the distance, Xiao Ta was shivering. Yi Xian glanced at Xiao Ta. This Xiao Ta was afraid of the Sword Spirit. Yi Xian held his sword and walked in front of Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta hurriedly said, "You, don't mess around. Violence is useless. Let's talk this out." The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. This guy was quite flexible. Yi Xian, he smiled and said, "I won't mess around. Like I want to ask you some questions. Can you answer me?" Xiao Ta was silent. The little friend suddenly held the sword and lightly patted his palm. At this moment, Xiao Ta hurriedly said, "Master is Sister Sword Spirit's master." Yi Xian was slightly stunned. He looked at the sword in his hand and understood. This Xiao Ta's master was the green-robed man. The green-robed man left for him was Xiao Ta. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and continued to ask, "Your master left you for me?" Xiao Ta nodded but quickly shook his head. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. "What do you mean?" Lilth Pagoda stuttered. Yi Xian smiled and said, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. Xiao Ta suddenly jumped up. Really? Yi Xian nodded. Xiao Ta turned and ran. Yi Xian, at this moment, a sword suddenly blocked in front of him. It was the sword spirit. The sword spirit fiercely slashed at Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta hurriedly dodged and begged, Sister Sword Spirit, don't hit me. Don't hit me. I won't leave. I really won't leave. I will be honest. Yi Xian, after slashing for a long time, the sword spirit stopped. Xiao Ta hid in a corner and looked a little pitiful. Yi Xian smiled and said, can we have a good talk? Xiao Ta felt a little wronged and said, you asked me to leave. I didn't leave on my own. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. What did your master leave you for me to do? Xiao Ta said, to help you. Yi Xian frowned slightly. To help me? Xiao Ta nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was a little curious. What can you help me with? Xiao Ta suddenly jumped up. I can help you a lot. Yi Xian asked, for example? Xiao Ta was speechless. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. It seems that you are a mascot. You can play by yourself. We are leaving. After saying that, he and Enlancio were about to leave. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless purple qi appeared in the tower. Yi Xian was stunned. He glanced at the purple qi and was a little shocked. This purple qi was so pure. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, this is primordial purple qi. It is only inferior to Little White's purple qi. If you use my purple qi to cultivate, your cultivation speed can increase by more than several times. In addition, my purple qi also has a powerful recovery ability. Yi Xian and Enlancio looked at each other. Both of their eyes were filled with shock. This purple qi was not ordinary purple qi. If they used it to cultivate, it shouldn't be difficult for them to reach the consolidation realm. At this moment, Xiao Ta said again, I still have some treasures. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, what treasures? Xiao Ta jumped up and down. He was very proud. Many, many treasures. Hee hee. Yi Xian, at this moment, Enlancio suddenly said, can you take it out for me to see? Xiao Ta hurriedly shook his head. I should not show my wealth. If I take it out, you will be thinking about it. Yi Xian was a little speechless. Aren't we on the same side? Why are you still guarding against us? Xiao Ta said, even blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta suddenly said, your strength is a little weak. I suggest you increase your strength. Otherwise, you will be in great danger. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Danger? Xiao Ta nodded. I can feel that something bad is about to happen. You better increase your strength quickly. Increase your strength. Yi Xian fell silent. Could it be that woman is about to make a move? During this period of time, that woman has not made a move. This is very abnormal. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, can I go out and play? Yi Xian glanced at Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta giggled. I won't run around. I will come back after playing for a while. As he said this, an ancient book suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian asked, this is? Xiao Ta hurriedly said, sword drawing technique. This is the sword drawing technique that Master improved. Take it and cultivate. Sword drawing technique. Yi Xian took the ancient book. He opened it and very quickly, his expression became solemn. This sword drawing technique was very different from the one that the green-clothed man gave him. Yi Xian kept the ancient book and looked at Xiao Ta. Go and play. Xiao Ta suddenly cheered. He directly turned into a purple light and disappeared in the prison pagoda. Inside the prison pagoda, Yi Xian looked at the ancient book in front of him and said softly, this sword skill is suitable for frontal attacks. Moreover, This sword skill focuses on breaking the surface with a single point. It has the meaning of, one sword breaks 10,000 techniques. It can be used for both offense and defense. And Lanxiu said, you should first fuse your instant death sword with life fist. Yi Xian nodded. He still wanted to fuse life fist with instant death sword first. As for this sword drawing technique, it is not that difficult to cultivate. He can temporarily take it slow. In the following time, Yi Xian began to study the instant death sword and life fist. And Lanxiu did not leave and continued to help in the pagoda. As for that Xiao Ta, Yi Xian was particularly speechless towards this Xiao Ta. Because this Xiao Ta has already gone somewhere. But fortunately, the sword spirit chased after him. Northern Wilderness. In front of the stone tablet, the divine envoy sat cross-legged on the ground. Behind her were Biyao and the others. At this moment, there are more people than before. There are more than 100 people. The aura of these people, including themselves, is much stronger than before. Obviously, the long period of hibernation has caused their strength to decline. Now, their strength is slowly recovering to the peak. At this moment, the divine envoy suddenly opened her eyes. A woman suddenly appeared in front of her. It is the mysterious woman from the sacred ground. Seeing the mysterious woman, Biyao and the others behind the divine envoy suddenly became gloomy. It is this woman again. The mysterious woman looked at the divine envoy and said with a smile, we meet again. The divine envoy asked, what is it? The mysterious woman nodded, I want to talk to you about a great opportunity. I wonder if you are interested? The divine envoy said, cooperate with you to deal with that young Yi Xian? The mysterious woman said with a smile, smart. You guessed it right. The divine envoy shook her head, that young man is not simple. The people behind him are not simple either. We will not cooperate with you. The mysterious woman blinked, can you represent the entire northern wilderness? The divine envoy said, now I can. Saying so, she looked at the mysterious woman, we will not be used by you. The mysterious woman said with a smile, that is because there are not enough benefits. The divine envoy frowned, even if you give us benefits, we will not team up with you. The mysterious woman smirked, that may not be true. Saying so, she opened her palm and a black box appeared in her hand. She opened the box. When she saw the item in the black box, her eyes suddenly narrowed. You, the mysterious woman smiled and did not speak. Instead, she turned to look at the stone tablet not far away. At this moment, a voice came from the stone tablet, we can talk. Chapter 1494. Let's talk. Hearing the voice, the mysterious woman smiled. Then let's talk. Not far away, the holy messenger was silent. Her gaze was fixed on the box in the mysterious woman's hand. At this moment, her heart was like a raging storm, and she was extremely shocked. A voice came from the stone tablet. How did you get this item? The mysterious woman blinked and smiled. I picked it up. The voice from the stone tablet fell silent. Picked it up? No one believed it. The mysterious woman suddenly smiled. I don't like to talk nonsense, so I'll be straightforward. You guys help me deal with Yi Xian. To be exact, you just need to help me stall 3 people. Once you stall them, this thing will be yours. The voice from the stone tablet said, that young man's background is not simple. The mysterious woman smiled. I'm not simple either. The voice was silent. The mysterious woman smiled. Take your time to think about it. Then, she turned and left. The voice from the stone tablet suddenly said, I agree. The mysterious woman smiled. Wait for my notice. After saying that, she disappeared. The saint walked to the stone tablet and whispered, Supreme Goddess, that young man has the constitution of adversity. He's not simple. This, the voice from the stone tablet said again, that's the black heaven and earth temple. We can't refuse her. The saint fell silent. The Black Heaven and Earth Temple. The number one treasure of the prehistoric era. The true number one treasure came from before the birth of this universe. It was an artifact but not an artifact. It existed forever and was indestructible. There were 6 ancient characters inside: Tao, life, death, kindness, evil, and calamity. Apart from that, the number one treasure of the Northern Wilderness tribe, the Northern Wilderness martial scripture, came from the Black Heaven and Earth Temple. There were countless secrets in the Black Heaven and Earth Temple. The Black Heaven and Earth Temple might contain an unknown era's inheritance, civilization, and treasures. The Black Heaven and Earth Temple used to be in the hands of the Northern Wilderness tribe. But then, the prehistoric era changed and the item disappeared. But now, it had appeared again. The saint asked softly, "Why is that item in her hands?" The Supreme Goddess said, "I don't know. However, based on the current situation, she probably doesn't know exactly what this item is. Otherwise, she would definitely not use this item to make a trade." The saint envoy said in a low voice, "Exalted deity, it's not normal for this woman to have this item. Moreover, that young man, Yi Xian, has a special background. If our clan becomes enemies with him, then I'm afraid we'll be tainted with some bad karma, and it might even bring about a calamity to our clan." The supreme deity in the stone tablet was silent. The divine envoy continued, "The temple of heaven and earth is naturally important to our tribe. However, have you ever thought about how powerful and intelligent this woman is? She is trying to sow discord and use all kinds of tricks to make us become enemies with that young Master Yi. What does this mean?" It meant that she was afraid of the person behind that young man. "I've also investigated this person. There's an extremely powerful expert following her, and there are also several mysterious women behind her. These people are not simple." Then, she looked at the stone tablet. "This woman wants us to be cannon fodder." Inside the stone tablet, the great deity suddenly said, "I want to see this person." The divine envoy said, "Should I invite him?" The exalted deity said, "There's no need, I'll meet him personally." The divine envoy was stunned for a moment before nodding. "All right." Sacred ground, inside the bamboo house. After the mysterious woman returned to the bamboo house, she placed the black box on the bamboo table. In front of the mysterious woman was Tree Boundless. Tree Boundless looked at the black box. "Does the Northern Wilderness care about this box?" The mysterious woman smiled. "They care about the item inside the box." Tree Boundless asked, "What is it?" The mysterious woman smiled. "A very ancient item." Tree Boundless looked at the mysterious woman. "You're not interested?" The mysterious woman shook her head. "At my level, other treasures or martial arts inheritances are no longer attractive to me." Tree Boundless looked at the black box curiously. "How did you get this item?" The mysterious woman smiled. "That little white guy touched it and I traded it for 2 candied haws." Hearing that, Tree Boundless' expression turned strange. That little white guy. Of course, she knew who the mysterious woman was talking about. She knew that the little white guy was playful and gluttonous, but she did not expect that he would sell such a precious item for 2 candied haws. What a wastrel. Tree Boundless shook his head. Suddenly, the mysterious woman said, "I'm going out for a while." Tree Boundless looked at the mysterious woman. "Are you going to make a move?" The mysterious woman shook her head. "Wait until that woman is far away." Tree Boundless nodded. "That's true. If that woman came back, everything they had done would be for naught. No one could stop that woman head on." As if thinking of something, Tree Boundless suddenly asked, "Yi Xian seems to be cultivating." The mysterious woman smiled. "Let him cultivate. After all, we don't have much time left." She put away the black box and left. Tree Boundless suddenly asked, "Do you look down on him that much?" The mysterious woman stopped and shook her head. "It's not that I look down on him. On the contrary, I admire him. Among my peers, there are not many who can compare to him." But we are from the same generation as his father. If we can't even beat him, then we have lived all these years in vain." Having said that, she opened the bamboo door and walked out. Inside the hall, Tree Boundless was silent. That era. At that moment, she thought of that woman again. That woman in a plain dress. That woman who had suppressed countless eras. In front of that woman, countless giants of the past paled in fear. In the five-dimensional universe. Inside the world prison pagoda, Yi Xian sat on the 9th floor. His eyes were closed, and his sword domain enveloped the entire world prison pagoda. In front of him was the unparalleled sword. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian once again grasped the unparalleled sword. Bang! A powerful force suddenly shook the pagoda, causing the surrounding walls to tremble. Yi Xian tightly gripped the unparalleled sword. Within his right hand was an endless amount of lifespan. This time, he burned 50 years of his lifespan. Yi Xian stared at the unparalleled sword in his hand. Although the sword domain was suppressing him, the power contained within the sword was too great. At this moment, the 9th floor was shaking violently. If not for the Tao law suppressing him, this pagoda would not have been able to withstand his current strength. His current strength was already a bit abnormal. On the side, Enlancio looked at Yi Xian. "Can you use the sword?" Yi Xian nodded. "I can now." As he spoke, he slowly raised the unparalleled sword. This sword, he could swing it. However, the speed was not enough. The power of this sword far exceeded the power of the instant death sword. It could be said to be several times more powerful. However, the speed was definitely not as fast as the instant death sword. At this moment, Enlancio suddenly said, "There are pros and cons." Yi Xian nodded. The power and speed of the instant death sword had actually reached the limit of his physical body. If the instant death sword fused with his life fist, unless his physical body reached the god realm, it would be very difficult for him to increase his speed. Yi Xian sighed softly and began to slowly release the power within the sword. During this period of time, in order to fuse the life fist with the instant death sword, he had burned more than 200 years of his lifespan. However, he still could not achieve his ideal state. This was because the unparalleled sword could no longer increase his speed. This meant that he had truly reached his own limit. On the other hand, without that speed, this sword of his would absolutely not be able to pose any threat to that woman. She wouldn't just stand there and let him slash her. Meanwhile, Enlancio spoke in a light voice, "Just do your best." Yi Xian gazed at Enlancio and smiled, "Right. Just do your best. If you really can't defeat her, then it can't be helped." Enlancio nodded. "This sword of yours has no chance of winning against that woman. However, there aren't many in this world that can withstand this sword of yours." The might of the life fist combined with the instant death sword was extraordinarily terrifying when two explosive martial techniques were fused. Yi Xian nodded. He glanced at the unparalleled sword in his hand and said, "This new sword technique shall be called the life sword." The life sword. A sword strike that burned one's lifespan. Yi Xian put the unparalleled sword away, and then he withdrew the ancient scroll that Xiao Ta had given him. The sword drawing technique. Yi Xian flipped open the scroll, and he gazed at it for a long time before he spoke in a light voice. "What an amazing sword drawing technique." Enlancio walked over to Yi Xian, glanced at it, and said softly, "It really is extraordinary." Yi Xian shook his head and laughed bitterly. "I think I need to consolidate my strength for a while. I've been busy dealing with those enemies every single day, and I've neglected my own sword Dao." His sword Dao hadn't improved in a very, very long time. His improvement was mainly in the aspect of his body, and he'd relied on external forces to improve his body. As for his sword Dao, it had stagnated for a very long time. Moreover, no one could help him in his future path of the sword Dao. Because he'd already walked his own path, and what he had to do now was continue walking down it and not stay where he was. At this moment, he recalled what the white-robed Qing had said. The unrestrained sword heart. Actually, he'd always been unable to truly attain the unrestrained sword heart because there were truly too many restraints in his heart. In the beginning, it was only Ling, then it was Big Sister Nian, and now it was the entire fifth dimension. There were more and more restraints, and they were the kind that couldn't be cut off. As for the swordsman's sword, the fewer restraints there were, the faster and sharper his sword would be. As he thought of this, Yi Xian's brows suddenly furrowed. Was this really the case? A person must have faith in life. What was his faith? It was to protect the people by his side. Responsibility. If a man couldn't shoulder his responsibilities, could he still be considered a man? Restraints? To him, the entire fifth dimension was indeed a restraint, but it was also Yi Xian's responsibility. Since it was his responsibility, how could he talk about restraints? Being heartless and giving up everything, could he really attain the unrestrained sword heart? Perhaps he could, but for Yi Xian, it was impossible. It was like a person abandoning his parents, wife, and children. This kind of person was indeed very free, because he didn't have any burdens. He was alone and free. However, this kind of freedom wasn't what Yi Xian wanted. To him, what was the use of a sword? It wasn't to seek invincibility. Instead, it was to protect. As he thought of this, many people suddenly appeared in Yi Xian's mind. Yi Ling, and Lanxiu, Lian Wanli, Tuoba Yan, Shao Qi, Shao Dao, Arrow, Mo Yinqi, Shao Qi, everything in the fifth dimension, and Sister Nian. Scenes of the past flashed through Yi Xian's mind like lightning. There were all kinds of ups and downs. After a long time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the sword in his hand and smiled. Qing'er, I understand what you mean by the unrestrained sword heart. The unrestrained sword heart doesn't mean abandoning everything, it doesn't mean being heartless or selfish. The unrestrained sword heart means doing things with a clear conscience, being a person with a clear conscience, and being free with a clear conscience. As he thought of this, the unparalleled sword in his hands suddenly trembled, and the sword's cry never stopped. Not only that, at this moment, all the swords in Yi Xian's body trembled, even the sword at the top of the pagoda trembled slightly, as if responding. P.S. Give me a ticket if you have one. 1 monthly ticket isn't much, you can't go to Singapore, 1 monthly ticket is nothing, anyone can afford it. Chapter 1495. Inside the pagoda, Yi Xian's eyes were closed. At that moment, he had entered a very strange state. Relaxed. He suddenly felt extremely relaxed. This was a feeling that he had never felt before. In the past, it was as if he had been imprisoned by shackles. There were shackles on his heart and thoughts, but now, those 2 shackles were gone. His thoughts were clear, and he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. At that moment, Lanxiu suddenly asked, Did you break through? Yi Xian opened his eyes and smiled. No, but I understand what true freedom is. As he said that, he looked at the supreme sword in his hand and chuckled. Previously, I was always shackled by myself, and my sword was also shackled by me. But it won't happen in the future. The supreme sword in Yi Xian's hand was still trembling as if it was responding. This sword originally did not have a spirit, and it was just a sword. Of course, this sword was very special. After all, it came from the Milky Way realm. But now, this sword had a spirit of its own. Yi Xian had bestowed it with a spirit of its own. The sword was extraordinary because of its master. The current Yi Xian already had the ability to change the sword. The breakthrough in his state of mind made Yi Xian look different. Previously, he was like a sword shackled by a scabbard. Although he was reserved, his hands and feet were tied, and he did not have the kind of momentum that could destroy thousands of enemies with one sword. But now, he was like an unsheathed sword. Not only did he show off his sharpness, but he also had a domineering sword aura that made people feel intimidated. At that moment, Lanxiu felt that Yi Xian was a swordsman. In fact, although Yi Xian was a swordsman, his combat strength was previously dependent on the power of his bloodline, his physical body, and the power of faith. It could be said that the reason why his combat strength was so strong was not because of his sword Dao. Apart from these few things, his combat strength was really not that great. Especially when he did not have a Dao body, his combat strength could be said to be greatly reduced. Could he easily kill a godly state powerhouse by relying on sword Dao alone? Of course not. Moreover, without the Dao physique, he could at most fight 1 or 2 god state experts, but if he had the Dao physique, even 10 god state experts wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Rather than a swordsman, it would be more accurate to say that he was a physique cultivator. Moreover, even though he'd taken a new path in the Dao of the sword, he hadn't taken it well. Because he hadn't gone far on this new path, and he'd remained stagnant. Now that he was enlightened, he was finally like a real swordsman. Confidence in the way of the sword. Of course, this was only the beginning. Yi Xian looked at the supreme sword in his hand and said with a smile, "This feeling is very wonderful. It's like the feeling when I first learned the sword." And Lanxiu suddenly said, "Congratulations." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "My path of the sword Dao is still very long." Although his mental state had broken through, he couldn't be arrogant at all. Why? Because there were too many formidable swordsmen by his side. Not to mention Qing, and the green-clothed man, he couldn't even compare to Tingyun now. There was also Big Sister Nian, and Big Sister Nian was a formidable swordsman as well. And Lanxiu suddenly said, "Try executing the insta-kill sword now." Yi Xian looked at Lanxiu. "Let's go somewhere else." And Lanxiu nodded. Both of them directly vanished within the pagoda, and it wasn't long before they arrived in a deathly silent starry sky. The two of them were 300 m apart. Yi Xian looked at Lanxiu. "Watch out." At the instant he finished speaking, a strand of sword light suddenly arrived between Lanxiu's brows. However, a spear had suddenly been pressed against Yi Xian's chest. In the distance, Lanxiu shook her head. "I've lost." She was unable to resist this strike of Yi Xian's. Even though her spear was extremely swift, but Yi Xian had an advantage over her. Xian had an advantage over her, and that was her Daoist physique. Yi Xian's sword was able to kill her, but her spear was unable to kill Yi Xian. Compared to before, Yi Xian's sword had already undergone a tremendous change. If he utilized external forces like the energy of faith, then she would be even more unable to fight him. Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand. His current insta-kill sword was too much faster than before. Most importantly, its might was much stronger than before as well. The breakthrough in his mental state this time had brought about a tremendous change to his sword Dao. At this moment, he finally felt that he was a swordsman and not a body refiner. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Lanxiu. "I'll defend if you attack me." As he spoke, he took out a sword sheath and placed the supreme sword into it. And Lanxiu understood what Yi Xian meant, and she immediately nodded. "All right." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly vanished on the spot, and a speck of cold light appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Sword drawing technique. An expanse of sword light suddenly erupted in front of Yi Xian, and that speck of cold light was instantly drowned out by this expanse of sword light. But in the next moment, that expanse of sword light was directly shattered. Bang! Yi Xian directly retreated explosively by 300 m. After he stopped, Yi Xian looked at Lanxiu. His sword drawing technique utilized a single point to break through, whereas Lanxiu's spear strike utilized a single point to break through, and he hadn't gone all out. Yi Xian looked at Lanxiu. Again. Lanxiu nodded, and then she tapped the tip of her foot lightly. In the next moment, an afterimage flashed to arrive before Yi Xian. Yi Xian held the hilt of his sword with his right hand, and then he suddenly drew it. OM. A sword howl shook the heavens and the earth. His sword descended. Rumble. Along with an explosion, Yi Xian's sword light was directly shattered. This time, Yi Xian retreated by over 1 kilometer. After he stopped, Yi Xian gazed at the sword in his hand and went silent. And Lanxiu didn't attack again. After a long time, Yi Xian said in a low voice, I know what the problem is. Imposing aura. As he spoke, his eyes slowly closed. Imposing aura. A person's imposing aura was extremely important, and his sword-drawing technique lacked precisely such an imposing aura. In the past, he'd seen the green-clothed man execute this sword technique, and that time was in the world below. When the green-clothed man executed this sword technique, that strike seemed as if it intended to slash the heavens apart. When he thought of imposing aura, he thought of Qing, Er's life and death decided with a single strike. Death is inevitable with this strike of mine. This sort of imposing aura was what he lacked the most. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian looked at Lanxiu. But in next to no time, he became slightly helpless. He wanted to be more ruthless, but how could he be ruthless towards Lanxiu? Should I slash him to death with this strike of mine? Towards Lanxiu, he seriously couldn't do it. Actually, Lanxiu didn't have that sort of killing aura when she attacked him with her spear either. On the contrary, she still held back strength and didn't dare to use her full strength. Two people sparring had advantages and disadvantages. Seeming to have thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, Come, I'll bring you to find someone. Finished talking, he directly brought Lanxiu along and vanished in the starry sky. Before long, the two people arrived at the Dao door again. The person who received Yi Xian and Lanxiu was an old man. When he saw Yi Xian, that old man had a slight headache because the person who received Yi Xian the last time was him. Yi Xian looked at the old man and said with a smile, Please inform Third Miss that I have something to look for her about. The old man hesitated and was just about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, You want to say that Third Miss isn't here, right? The old man was speechless. Yi Xian smiled and said, Go tell Third Miss that I'm here. Yi Xian won't make it difficult for her. The old man was still hesitant. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Lanxiu. It was the Third Miss. The Third Miss looked at Yi Xian, how annoying. Yi Xian smiled and said, Third Miss, I trust you've been well since we last met. The Third Miss said indifferently, Is something the matter? Yi Xian cupped his fists and said, I hope Third Miss can help me with something. The Third Miss said, What is it? Yi Xian said, Hit me. And Lanxiu was very strong, but she couldn't bring herself to be ruthless, and he similarly couldn't bring himself to be ruthless towards Lanxiu. Moreover, if both of them showed mercy during sparring, then what was the point of sparring? So he wanted to find someone who could beat him up. Only in this way would he be able to find out where he was lacking. The Third Miss looked at Yi Xian, You want to spar with me? Yi Xian nodded, Yes. The Third Miss was silent. Yi Xian asked, Can I? The Third Miss glanced at Yi Xian, Why do you suddenly want to spar with me? Yi Xian smiled and said, I just want to improve myself. The Third Miss nodded, Okay. Yi Xian blinked, You agree? The Third Miss said, Spar with me. Come with me. Saying that, she turned and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then followed the Third Mississippi. Soon, the Third Miss brought Yi Xian to an empty square. Around this square, there were all kinds of array formations stabilizing the space. The Third Miss looked at Yi Xian, How do you want to spar? Yi Xian said, Hit me. Before he could finish his words, the distant third young lady suddenly disappeared. Before Yi Xian could react, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Then, his whole body flew backward and finally hit the space barrier. The entire trial square suddenly shook violently. And Lanxiu, in the distance, Yi Xian looked a little pained because he felt like his body was falling apart. When did his Dao body become so weak? At this moment, the Third Miss suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian was stunned. He was about to speak when the Third Miss suddenly punched his head. Bang! Yi Xian's whole body directly hit the ground and slid hundreds of feet away. The moment he stopped, he felt dizzy as if he was going to faint. At this moment, the third mist suddenly appeared in front of him again. Before he could react, the third mist directly grabbed one of his legs and lifted him up. Then, she slammed him into the ground. Boom! The ground directly collapsed, turning into a huge pit. But it was not over yet. The third mist suddenly kicked Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian instantly flew more than 100 feet away. Before he landed, the third mist appeared in front of him again and then flew up and kicked him in the abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian directly flew out and hit the space barrier in the distance. Boom! The surrounding space barrier directly cracked. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, the third mist appeared in front of him again. Then, she directly grabbed one of Yi Xian's legs and slammed it on the ground. Bang 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 bang. Deep pits directly appeared in the surrounding ground. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly wailed, "Stop! Stop!" the third mist said while hitting him. "What? Don't stop. Use force?" "Okay, I will use force." Bang 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 bang, Yi Xian. Chapter 1496. Just like that, Yi Xian was beaten for nearly half an hour before he stopped. During this period, Yi Xian tried to resist. But it was useless. The more he resisted, the worse he was beaten. Every time he wanted to use his sword, it was useless, because as soon as the sword appeared, he would be beaten even worse. The main reason was that he was beaten silly from the beginning. And his Dao body seemed to be useless in front of the third young lady. After the third young lady stopped, she walked to the side, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. It was really comfortable. In fact, she had wanted to beat this guy for a long time. But there was no chance. But she didn't expect that this guy would come to her and ask her to beat him. How could she refuse such a good thing? In the distance, Yi Xian climbed up and looked at the third young lady in the distance. The third young lady turned to look at Yi Xian and said seriously, "How do you feel?" Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. "Third young lady, did you just want to beat me?" The third young lady sneered, "You actually thought that I just wanted to beat you?" Yi Xian glanced at the third young lady. "Isn't that the case?" The third young lady walked in front of Yi Xian. "Of course not. The reason why I beat you was to let you understand your current shortcomings. Moreover, you asked me to beat you, you asked me to." Saying that, she pointed to the distant Anlanxiu. "She can testify." Anlanxiu, Yi Xian shook his head. He had fallen for this woman's trick. The third young lady suddenly said, "What do you think now?" Yi Xian said lightly, "My thought is to be careful of women." The third young lady, as if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Third young lady, why is my Dao body so vulnerable in front of you?" The third young lady smiled, "Because I also cultivate Dao body. And let me tell you, Dao body doesn't mean invincible. When a person is too strong, they can directly destroy your body. Of course, your physical body is a little special because you have a powerful bloodline. The recovery ability of your bloodline is too abnormal." Although Yi Xian had just been beaten up, his body had more or less recovered, which made her rather depressed. "Third young lady, how strong are you?" Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. He suddenly realized that the woman in front of him was much, much stronger than he had imagined. Even though he hadn't truly fought with his life on the line just now, and he would still be able to fight back if he utilized the sword domain and faith energy. However, he noticed that the three of them hadn't attacked him with the intent to kill. Moreover, he wanted to see if he could resist them without utilizing external forces. The outcome was that he couldn't. The third young lady laughed, "I'm not that strong. I just started cultivating earlier than you." Yi Xian shook his head. "You're too humble." The third young lady smiled, "Unless you have invincible strength, you have to be humble. Being humble will help you live longer." Yi Xian said solemnly. Sister Nian said the same thing. The third young lady laughed. "Fifth dimension Tendo?" Yi Xian nodded his head. The third young lady whispered, "She is an amazing person." Yi Xian smiled. "You know Sister Nian?" The third young lady nodded. "I have investigated her. She is a person of faith. And she was willing to seal her strength for your fifth dimension. She is worthy of respect. Of course, you are also not bad. At least she didn't misjudge you. Yi Xian smiled and then said, "Third young lady, to be honest, there is one thing that I don't understand. You, Dao Laoer, and Dao Laoer are all disciples of the Taoist sect's grand ancestor. So why is there such a big gap between you?" He discovered that the difference in IQ between second young Dao and the third young lady was like heaven and earth. The third young lady shook her head. Second senior brother was also very outstanding. He was able to use Master's Dao scripture to create the dark scripture, which proved his talent. It was power that harmed him. After Master left, the Dao faction was like a group of dragons without a leader. At that time, the Dao faction was the #1 force in the universe. Second senior brother and eldest senior brother were fighting for the position of Dao faction's master. Therefore, the two of them directly fought for this position and the great Dao spirit. Unfortunately, the great Dao spirit did not choose either of them. At this point, she sighed, "At that time, I should have stood up. If I had fought, they would not have been able to compete with me. But I really have no interest in the position of Dao faction's master." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, "Third young lady, you have no interest in the position of Dao faction's master, but in the end, you became the Dao faction's master. This life," the third young lady laughed, "Young Master Yi, you also don't seem to have any interest in the master of the fifth dimension." Yi Xian nodded, "However, I will not let go of the fifth dimension." The third young lady chuckled, "This is where I am inferior to you. I was a little selfish at that time. I only wanted to live according to my own ideas. Although this is not wrong, I should not let go of the responsibility that I should bear." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Do you have an eldest senior brother?" The third young lady nodded, "I contacted him. He is no longer interested in the position of Dao faction's master." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Third young lady, you are so strong, but you still can't beat that woman." The third young lady looked at Yi Xian, "You know?" Yi Xian nodded, "I know." The third young lady chuckled, "The reason why you think I am strong now is because you are still a little weak. Remember, in this world, there is no strongest, only stronger." Yi Xian said, "I want to kill her." The third young lady stared at Yi Xian, "Are you serious?" Yi Xian nodded. The third young lady fell into silence. Yi Xian said, "Do you think it's impossible?" The third young lady said softly, "Young Master Yi, you are a genius. Among the younger generation, there are very few who are better than you. But do you know who you are going to face? She is not from the same generation as you. She has cultivated for tens of thousands of years more than you. Do you know how difficult it is to jump levels and challenge her?" Yi Xian smiled, "But I can't just wait for death, right?" The third young lady nodded, "Indeed." Saying that, she sighed softly, "Forget it. I don't need to worry about the matters between you two. Since you came to me to spar, let's start now." Yi Xian cupped his fists, "Thank you." The third young lady looked at Yi Xian, "Make your move against me." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Third young lady, I will do my best." The third young lady smiled, "Come on. Don't worry, I won't be careless." Yi Xian nodded. The next moment, he suddenly struck with his sword. Instant kill. This sword was fast to the extreme, but it was still caught by 2 fingers. The third young lady held onto Yi Xian's sword and smiled, "Your swordsmanship realm has broken through." Yi Xian nodded, "But it doesn't seem to work." The third young lady shook her head, "No." As she spoke, she loosened 2 of her fingers. On her 2 fingers, there were 2 traces of blood. The third young lady looked at Yi Xian, "If it was before, this sword of yours would not be a threat to me at all. But now, your sword can hurt me. You should know that I have a God-state Taoist body. If it was someone else, this sword of yours would be enough to kill them." Yi Xian was relieved. He almost forgot that the third young lady had a God-state Taoist body. He also had a Taoist body, so he knew how terrifying it was. The third young lady suddenly said, "You are more like a swordsman now. Now, your sword does not have so many external enhancements, so it is more pure. This is a good thing." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "How can this sword of mine be a threat to you?" The third young lady looked at Yi Xian. "Your speed must be at least 5 times faster, and your strength must be at least 10 times stronger. Only then can you kill me with one strike. You cannot do without either. You have the speed, but not the strength. My Taoist body can defend against this sword of yours. You have the strength, but not the speed. I can escape before you strike, or I can strike first." Yi Xian said softly, "I understand." The third young lady said, "Now, you can use your external strength to enhance your swordsmanship." Yi Xian shook his head, "No need." Saying that, he suddenly took a step forward, and the sword domain enveloped the third young lady. The next moment, a ray of sword light flashed through the sword domain. The third young lady suddenly punched. Boom! As soon as she punched, the ray of sword light was stopped by her punch. Inside the ray of sword light was Yi Xian's sword. However, Yi Xian's sword stabbed into the third young lady's fist by half an inch. The third young lady suddenly withdrew her fist, but in the next moment, she punched again. Boom! The ray of sword light shattered, and the moment it shattered, a sword silently arrived between the third young lady's eyebrows. However, the sword stopped half an inch away from her eyebrows. Because the third young lady had unknowingly grabbed the sword in the ray of sword light. At this moment, in the distance, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. In an instant, countless rays of sword light crisscrossed and tore through the sword domain. Chi 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 chi. Tearing sounds resounded, and it made one's scalp go numb. The third young lady slowly closed her eyes. When the sword chi arrived in front of her, she suddenly clenched her right hand, and a powerful fist force suddenly swept out from her body. Life fist. Without burning one's lifespan, it was just the fist force of life fist. However, this fist force directly crushed all of Yi Xian's sword chi. Not only that, but the sword domain was also trembling, and it was almost unable to withstand this force. However, there were several sword wounds all over her body. Yi Xian's sword could already break through her defense, but it was not enough because it was not fatal. The third young lady looked at Yi Xian, slowly loosened her right hand, and then said, "Continue." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the supreme sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he directly appeared in front of the third young lady, and suddenly pulled out the sword and slashed down. Sword drawing technique. As the sword slashed out, a powerful force swept down from the top of the third young lady's head. The third young lady suddenly clenched her right hand, and a powerful fist force surged out from her right hand. Boom! Yi Xian was directly shaken back. However, in the next moment, Yi Xian rushed out again. In this way, in the following time, Yi Xian madly sparred with the third young lady every day, practicing the instant kill sword and the sword drawing technique. As for life fist, he could not practice it because to obtain the power of life, he had to burn his lifespan, and he really could not afford to practice it. Under the crazy practice, the power of Yi Xian's instant kill sword and the sword drawing technique also became stronger and stronger. This also made Yi Xian understand that there was no limit, only a higher limit. As for Enlancio, she was no longer in the Tao sect, and she had come to an unknown starry sky. In her hand was the map that Yi Xian gave her. Looking for Miss Ding. Yi Xian knew that if he went to look for her, the mysterious woman would definitely know. Therefore, he cultivated hard in the Tao sect to attract attention, and secretly asked Enlancio to look for Miss Ding. Chapter 1497. Enlancio was flying through the starry sky. She knew a little about that mysterious woman from the hallowed grounds, Dao Yi, and she was absolutely the strongest enemy Yi Xian had encountered so far. Just as the third young miss had said, the current Yi Xian couldn't resist that mysterious woman at all. She and Yi Xian weren't from the same generation at all. Moreover, Yi Xian's only bloodline that could pose a slight threat to her had been sealed and suppressed by her. Most importantly, that woman wasn't alone. She was even forming alliances. What the hell was she doing? Yi Xian naturally wouldn't resign himself to death. That woman didn't stop him from cultivating, but she stopped him from looking for Miss Ding. Obviously, that woman was rather afraid of Miss Ding. This time, Lanxiao wasn't going alone. Instead, she was bringing Xiao Ta and the sword spirit along. Because Xiao Ta was able to conceal Lanxiao's aura, and the sword spirit was naturally there to restrain the gaudy Xiao Ta. Without the sword spirit, Xiao Ta would ascend to the heavens. Lanxiao suddenly stopped and opened the map that Yi Xian had given her. After a long time, she transformed into a ray of light and vanished into the starry sky. After the mysterious woman left the hallowed grounds, she arrived in the starry sky, and then she waved her fair hand lightly. The starry sky in front of her was directly torn open, and she walked into the spatial rift. In the next moment, she appeared in an unknown starry sky. She didn't stop, and she continued tearing open the starry sky and leaping through space. Just like that, she stopped after around 4 hours. At this moment, she was in a deathly silent starry sky. There wasn't any aura of life in this starry sky. Moreover, there was a putrid smell everywhere, and it was nauseating. The mysterious woman casually waved her hand, and the putrid smell in the surroundings vanished without a trace. She glanced at the surroundings, and then she transformed into a ray of light and entered a deathly silent starry sky. When she entered the planet, she frowned slightly because this planet was filled with an aura of death and decay. Not only that, but there were also rotting corpses everywhere she looked. The woman in the plain dress floated into the distance. Not long after, she arrived before an ancient city. When she approached the ancient city, a nauseating smell of decay rushed towards her like a tidal wave. There was also the smell of blood mixed in this rotten smell. The mysterious woman looked at the city. The city was filled with densely packed corpses. These corpses had been dead for a long time, but they were all soaked in blood. The blood contained a mysterious power, and it was this mysterious power that allowed these corpses to be preserved. There were at least several million corpses in the entire city. This place was simply a living hell. The mysterious woman spoke softly. The stronger some people are, the lower their limits are. As she spoke, she pressed her fingers together and gestured lightly. A black coffin floated up slowly from within the city. At the very least, the coffin was covered in countless blood-red talismans, and it seemed rather strange. Right at this moment, the coffin suddenly started trembling. A moment later, a savage voice resounded from within it. Who dares to disturb my cultivation? Are you tired of living? As soon as the voice resounded, a ray of blood-red light suddenly surged out from within the coffin, and then it shot violently towards the mysterious woman. The mysterious woman waved her hand. Bang! The ray of blood-red light was instantly blasted apart. At the same time, a mysterious force blasted against the coffin. Bang! The coffin instantly shattered apart, and then a man appeared in midair. The man's hair was disheveled, his body was emaciated, and his entire body emanated an extremely unpleasant and rotten smell. The man stared fixedly at the mysterious woman. Who are you? The mysterious woman had an emotionless expression on her face. I'll give you a fortune. Do you want it? The man laughed coldly. Give me a fortune? How arrogant of you. The mysterious woman suddenly spread open her right hand, and then she stretched it forward and pressed it down. Bang! In the distance, the man directly smashed down from the sky, and a huge crater appeared on the ground. On the ground, the man looked at the mysterious woman in the distance. At this moment, his eyes became slightly solemn. Who the hell are you? The mysterious woman's face was expressionless. You're the Immortal Emperor, right? The man stood up slowly and stared at the mysterious woman. Who the hell are you? The mysterious woman smiled. You slaughtered all the living beings here to make use of the aura of death within their bodies to strengthen yourself, so that you can reach the godly state and control the boundless aura of death, right? The man clenched his right hand slowly. So what if I am? The mysterious woman looked at the man. Now, I'll give you a chance to help you reach the godly state. The man narrowed his eyes slightly. Help me reach the godly state? The mysterious woman smiled. Yes. The man sneered. Do you have the ability to do that? The mysterious woman suddenly slapped him. The man's pupils constricted, and he threw a punch forward. Bang! With a punch, the man was sent flying. When he slammed into the city wall behind him, the ancient city instantly turned into nothingness, and the man's body split open, revealing his internal organs. The man gulped, and he raised his head to look at the mysterious woman in the distance. At this moment, his eyes were no longer solemn, but fearful. He knew that the woman's strength was far beyond his. The mysterious woman said, "Do you believe me now?" The man said in a deep voice, "Who the hell are you?" The mysterious woman shook her head. "Don't ask these meaningless questions. You should ask what I want you to do." The man looked at the mysterious woman. "What do you want me to do?" The mysterious woman smiled. "You're too weak now. You can't do anything." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and an ancient scroll appeared in front of the man. "This can help you reach the godly state, and there's a map in it. Once you reach the godly state, look for me immediately. I'll give you 10 days, it should be enough." The man opened the scroll and glanced at it. Gradually, his expression became extremely solemn. After a while, the man looked at the mysterious woman. "Senior, what do you want me to do?" The mysterious woman smiled. "When the time comes, I'll let you do something to restrain some people. Of course, you might have to pay with your life, or you might not have to do anything. So, you can choose now. If you're not willing, I won't force you. If you're willing, I'll help you reach the godly state." The man said, "I'm willing." The mysterious woman smiled. "Won't you consider it?" The undying emperor looked at the woman. "There's no need to consider it. If I don't break through, I won't be able to live for long." The mysterious woman looked at the undying emperor and smiled. "Indeed." As she spoke, she looked around. "I don't like this place, I'm leaving." Then, she turned around and left. The undying emperor suddenly said, "Aren't you afraid that I won't look for you after I reach the godly state?" The mysterious woman didn't even turn her head. "You can try." As she spoke, she disappeared into the horizon. The undying emperor remained silent. No one knew what he was thinking. Taoism. In the training field, Yi Xian sat with his legs crossed, recalling the scene of him sparring with the third lady. He was thinking about his own shortcomings. He had to admit that he had learned a lot from sparring with the third lady. Not only had his insticle sword technique and sword drawing technique improved greatly, he had also gained new insights into his life fist. Not far away, the third lady glanced at Yi Xian. In fact, she was a little shocked. Not long ago, Yi Xian was not a threat to her, but now, Yi Xian was a threat to her. If she hadn't cultivated her Tao body to the godly state, it would be hard to say who would win between her and Yi Xian. In other words, if an ordinary godly state expert were to fight against Yi Xian, they would be instantly killed by Yi Xian. Because his sword was truly fast enough. The reason why she could suppress Yi Xian was because of her physical body. Her physical body was stronger than Yi Xian's. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. He opened his palm and the supreme sword appeared in his hand. He looked at the third lady in the distance and said, "Let's continue." As he spoke, he was about to draw his sword. At this moment, the third lady shook her head and said, "You have a guest." Yi Xian frowned and said, "That woman?" The third lady shook her head and said, "No." As she spoke, she looked to the right and said, "You guys talk." After saying that, she turned and left. Yi Xian looked at where the third lady was looking. There, the space suddenly split and a shadow floated out. The shadow was blurry and he couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman. Yi Xian looked at the shadow and asked, "You are?" The shadow said, "The northern wilderness." The voice was blurry and he couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman. The northern wilderness. Yi Xian was stunned and said, "What's the matter?" The shadow said, "It's nothing, I just came to see you." "See me?" Yi Xian's expression became slightly strange. He glanced at the shadow and said, "I think you should know the truth of the matter." "Am I right?" The shadow said, "That woman wants the northern wilderness to deal with you. What do you think about this?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "If I'm not wrong, she must have given you a treasure or condition that you can't refuse, right?" The shadow said, "Yes." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "What do you think?" The shadow said, "I want to hear what you think." Yi Xian smiled and said, "My idea is very simple. I will sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight." The shadow didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. You will always be in an invincible position. What do you think?" The shadow said softly, "But the thing she gave me is very tempting." Yi Xian asked, "How tempting?" The shadow said, "It can change the fate of the entire northern wilderness." Yi Xian said, "Only when you are alive can you have a fate." The shadow said softly, "But you are very weak." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Can you see through that mysterious woman?" The shadow said, "I can't." Yi Xian shrugged and said, "She is my aunt, the blood kind." The shadow was silent. Yi Xian said again, "Sir, to tell you the truth, I have a dozen other aunts like her. In the end, this is our family's business, it's not good for you to get involved. Also, what if one day my aunt thinks it through? She won't hit me anymore. At that time, what will you do? At that time, it will be the two of us who will hit you. What do you think?" Then he paused and said, "Although my aunt has always been against me because of some things, I don't hate her at all. Because I know that there are no misunderstandings that can't be solved in a family. After all, she is my aunt. My blood. Blood is thicker than water." The shadow. P.S. Some readers told me to slow down the pace and write in more detail. However, when I slowed down the pace, I was scolded. Brothers, reading a book is like making a big sword, you can't just start with the climax of the plot. Everything needs to be foreshadowed, which is a process. Just like in a relationship, don't you have to eat first, then watch a movie, and finally? How can you just get straight to the point? Although this process is a bit boring, it must be done. Without this process, how could there be such a thing? Don't you guys think that makes sense? Sorry, I went a bit off topic. In the end, everyone could see that the woman in the plain dress had left and the plot had sped up. Next, watch me, Luan, show off. One more small request, when you scold me, can you be a bit more reserved? My mental endurance is a bit low. Chapter 1498. Blood is thicker than water. The phantom was silent. Although this Yi Xian was bluffing, but it had to be said that what he said was reasonable. This was other people's family matter. If one day this pair of nephew and aunt suddenly stopped fighting and reconciled, at that time, wouldn't they really be in a bad situation? Yi Xian looked at the phantom. "Your Excellency, if I were you, I would choose to wait and see, not help anyone, wait until both of us are injured, then you come out to clean up the mess, isn't that perfect?" The phantom said softly, "What you said is reasonable." Saying that, his body gradually became illusory. Obviously, he was about to leave. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Wait, wait." The phantom said, "What's the matter?" Yi Xian hesitated, and then said, "I heard that you are from a prehistoric civilization." The phantom nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian said, "Can I understand you?" The phantom said, "Understand us?" And some nodded quickly. "I heard that your cultivation method is somewhat different from ours, is that right?" The phantom said, "It is indeed not the same, but the essence is not too different. We all obtain great strength through cultivation." Yi Xian quickly asked, "Do you have a physical cultivation method?" The phantom said, yes. Yi Xian blinked, look at me, look at my physical body, do you think my physical body can still break through? The phantom looked at Yi Xian, and said softly, your physical body is very strong, but there is still a lot of room for improvement. Yi Xian quickly asked, do you have a way to improve my physical body again? The phantom nodded, there is, but why should we help you? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, what do you think of me? The phantom asked, what do you mean in which aspect? Yi Xian said, all aspects. The phantom said, glib, flowery, not what you mean. Yi Xian suddenly said, stop, just say something good. The phantom remained silent. Yi Xian frowned. I don't have any merits in your heart? The phantom said, he has many backers. Yi Xian's face immediately darkened, and he almost went berserk. Yi Xian took a deep breath and pointed to himself. Sir, don't you think I'm very outstanding? It's not an exaggeration to say that an outstanding young man like me should be the very, very rare kind of person in your prehistoric era, right? The figure shook his head. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why are you shaking your head? The figure said, I've existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and in these endless years, I've seen all kinds of people, but I've never seen someone with such thick skin. Or is it that modern humans are all so thick-skinned? Yi Xian was speechless. The mysterious man continued, you've said so much because you want us to help you improve your physical body, right? Yi Xian nodded. That's right. The phantom said, why should I help you improve your physical body? Can you give me a reason? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, why don't you state your conditions? After a moment of silence, the phantom said, you don't have anything that we want. Yi Xian suddenly said, a favor. The phantom looked at Yi Xian. A favor? Yi Xian smiled and said, yes. Help me, and I'll owe you a favor. The phantom said softly, you're trying to get something for nothing. Yi Xian, the phantom suddenly said, okay. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, you agree? The phantom nodded. I agree. Come with me to the Northern Desolate. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, the Northern Desolate? The phantom said, afraid? Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. With your strength, if you want to kill me, isn't it a piece of cake? Why do you have to trick me to the Northern Desolate? The phantom said, let's go. After that, the space in front of Yi Xian suddenly cracked. Yi Xian hesitated, then looked to the right and cupped his fists. Third young lady, thank you for all this time. After that, he walked into the space crack. The phantom also disappeared. On the other side, the third young lady looked at Yi Xian disappearing in the distance, silent. The Northern Desolate. When Yi Xian came out of the teleportation array, he directly appeared in front of a huge stone tablet. Yi Xian glanced around. This is the Northern Desolate. And not far from him stood a woman, the woman's fingertips flashed with knife light. Saint. And behind the saint were Biyao and the others. When Yi Xian saw Biyao and the others, his expression changed. Behind Biyao, there were more than 200 people, these people at least above the immortal state, judging from their aura. And the woman at the head of the group, her strength was unfathomable. This Northern Desolate is so strong. Biyao looked at Yi Xian, not particularly friendly. Glancing at them, Yi Xian said with a smile, hello, everyone. The saint looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you want to strengthen your body? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Then, he looked at the saint. How should I address you, young lady? The saint smiled. Mu Shi. Yi Xian said, Miss Mu Shi, where is the senior who brought me here? Mu Shi smiled. Young Master Yi, please wait for a moment. The exalted god will appear soon. Yi Xian nodded. Okay. Then, he looked around. It was surrounded by clouds and he could not see far. Mu Shi smiled. Young Master Yi seems to be a bit curious about the northern desolate region. Yi Xian said with a smile, indeed. Miss Mu Shi, there is one thing I am very curious about. That is, how are your realms divided? Then, he pointed at Biyao. For example, he should be in the immortal state in our era. What about in your era? Mu Shi smiled. The immortal state you speak of is in the Tao scripture system, right? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Mu Shi said, in our era, he is called the Tao defiant state. Yi Xian frowned. Tao defiant? Mu Shi nodded. At his level, he can reverse the death qi in his body and gradually turn it into life qi. This action is equivalent to going against the heavens. Therefore, in our era, he is called the Tao defiant state. He has the ability to reverse the Tao and reverse life and death. Yi Xian asked again, what about above the Tao defiant state? Mu Shi smiled. Eternal. Yi Xian blinked. Eternal realm? Mu Shi nodded. At this level, the body is eternal, the soul is eternal, and the spirit is eternal. Of course, the lifespan will still disappear. However, it is possible for an expert of this level to live for hundreds of thousands of years. Of course, the premise is that they are not killed by others or seek their own death. Yi Xian said softly, is there anyone who can live forever? Mu Shi looked at Yi Xian. No. Yi Xian looked at Mu Shi. In your era, no one can live forever? Mu Shi shook her head. I can tell you that a person, through cultivation, can live for a very, very long time, even millions of years. But up until now, in our recorded history, no one has been able to live forever. Even the gods are limited by their lifespan and are unable to achieve true eternal life. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why can't true eternal life be achieved? Mu Shi smiled. If someone can achieve true eternal life, then there is only one possibility. That is, the current laws of the universe have completely collapsed. Yi Xian was a little curious. The laws of the universe? Mu Shi nodded. According to what we know, there are currently 9 laws of the universe. One of them is the life law. Everyone's lifespan is limited by the life law. No one can live forever. No life can achieve eternal existence. Because once someone lives forever, the universe will be in chaos. Think about it, if a person can't die, wouldn't that be terrifying? Yi Xian nodded. That's true. Mu Shi continued. Some people can go against the Tao. However, no one can go against the laws of the universe. That's not right. At least no one can go against the first 5 laws of the universe. If someone can go against the eternal law, perhaps they can really live forever. However, it is basically impossible. Yi Xian was a little curious. Why is it impossible? Mu Shi smiled slightly. The laws of the universe are existences of a higher level. We're only in contact with the Tao now, but the laws of the universe are existences that surpass the Tao. When she spoke up to here, she glanced at Yi Xian and said, your adversity constitution belongs to a different kind of existence, an extremely different kind of existence. Yi Xian asked, a different kind of existence? Does it belong to the laws of the universe? Mu Shi shook her head. I'm unable to answer that. Because I only know that there are 9 laws of the universe. However, I don't know exactly which 9 laws they are. So, I can't be sure if your adversity constitution is related to the laws of the universe. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, what if my adversity constitution is really the work of the laws of the universe? Mu Shi thought for a long time, and then she said, be a good person in your next life. Yi Xian was speechless. Right at this moment, the stone steel behind Yi Xian suddenly trembled, and a voice resounded from within it. Mu Shi looked at Yi Xian. Follow me. Yi Xian glanced at the stone steel, and then he said, what are you exalted goddess doing inside? Mu Shi said, it's a secret. A secret. Yi Xian was speechless. Mushi suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, I heard that the woman who wanted to beat you up is your aunt?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes," she said, "she's my aunt." Mushi said, "Since there's an aunt, there must be a grandfather. Why don't you go look for your grandfather?" Yi Xian shrugged. "I think it's said that my grandfather was killed by my cheapskate father." Mushi stopped in her tracks and turned to look at Yi Xian. "Killed by your father?" Yi Xian nodded. "That's what they said." Mushi frowned slightly. "Your father killed your father-in-law?" Yi Xian nodded. "Actually, it's hard for me to understand too. However, I heard that my grandfather isn't a good person either." Mushi said softly, "Your family is really amazing." Yi Xian was curious. "Miss Mushi, can your exalted deity defeat that woman?" Mushi shook her head, "I don't know. We'll only know after we fight." Yi Xian said, "Do you have any good suggestions for my current situation?" Mushi thought for a moment, and then she said, "You can ask your aunt if we can spare their lives if they surrender." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1499. Yi Xian glanced at Mushi. This woman's words were quite amusing. Could he not be killed if he surrendered? However, he could ask her when the time came. Before long, Mushi brought Yi Xian to a cloud. Not far from the two of them, there were countless flashes of lightning. It was a pool of lightning. Yi Xian looked at Mushi. "Miss Mushi, are you going to use the heavenly lightning to temper my body?" Mushi shook her head. "Not for you." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Then Mushi looked at Yi Xian. "Absorb." Yi Xian was stunned. "Absorb the lightning?" Mushi nodded. She looked at the pool of lightning in the distance. This pool of lightning is the heavenly tribulation lightning of our era. It contains extremely pure lightning power. If you can absorb the lightning elements, your body should be able to break through again. Yi Xian looked at the pool of lightning. Within it, lightning flashed, and the might of the heavens was oppressive. Mushi suddenly said, "Go." Yi Xian hesitated. "Is it dangerous?" Mushi nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian blinked. "What danger?" Mushi said, "It might electrocute you to death." Yi Xian, after a while, Yi Xian didn't ask anymore. He walked towards the pool of lightning. The closer he got to the pool of lightning, the stronger the might of the heavenly lightning. Yi Xian stopped and turned to look at Mushi. "Miss Mushi, are you going to absorb it forcefully?" Mushi looked at Yi Xian. "Yes." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." With that, he transformed into a sword light and entered the pool of lightning. Boom! As soon as he entered the pool of lightning, countless bolts of lightning struck Yi Xian. In an instant, Yi Xian became a man of lightning. Was it painful? Yi Xian didn't feel much pain, just a little numb. Meanwhile, Mushi suddenly pointed with her finger, and a ray of white light entered the space between Yi Xian's brows. At the same time, Mushi's voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind. "This is a mental cultivation technique. Follow it and you'll be able to absorb the heavenly lightning tribulation in the surroundings into your body, and then convert it into lightning energy to strengthen your body." Yi Xian nodded. A moment later, he began to circulate the mental cultivation method. Gradually, the lightning in his surroundings began to be absorbed by his body. At this moment, he felt warm and comfortable. Yi Xian grinned. This was the first time he felt so comfortable cultivating his physical body. In the past, when he cultivated his physical body, he was in so much pain that he wanted to die. Actually, the main reason was that his physical body was strong enough, which was why he could do it so easily. A moment later, Yi Xian calmed himself down and concentrated on absorbing the tribulation lightning. Mushi turned around and left. Mushi arrived in front of the stone tablet, and a phantom image appeared on the stone tablet. It was the mysterious exalted deity. Mu Shi said softly, exalted deity still chose him. Exalted deity said, it's not that I chose him, but that we had no choice but to form a good relationship with him. Mu Shi said, isn't there still that mysterious woman? Exalted deity said softly, choosing that woman will lead to eternal damnation. Mu Shi said in a low voice, exalted deity, did you discover something? Exalted deity said, the body of adversity is scarier than I imagined. The fact that that young man could survive until now means that there must be a powerful expert protecting him. Otherwise, he would not have been able to survive until now. And the person who can resist the body of adversity. At this point, she didn't say anything else. Mu Shi said, that mysterious woman must know how powerful the person behind him is, but she still did it. Why? Exalted deity said, I don't know. But from the looks of it, this woman is a little crazy. What my clan needs to do is to form a good relationship with that young man, and then wait and see what happens. If the mysterious woman wins, we just won't be able to obtain the mysterious temple of heaven and earth, but our clan can continue to pass on. If that Yi Xian wins, our clan will benefit greatly. Mu Shi nodded. I understand. But what if that woman wants us to choose a side? Exalted deity said softly, then we will choose Yi Xian. Mu Shi was curious. Why? Exalted deity said, do you believe in justice? Mu Shi shook her head. Not really. Since ancient times, whoever wins is justice. Exalted deity said softly, then you can believe it. Mu Shi was a little curious. Yi Xian is justice? Exalted deity said, have you seen the five-dimensional universe? Mu Shi was slightly stunned, then she said softly, I understand. As she said this, she seemed to have thought of something and frowned. Something is not right. Yi Xian has the body of adversity, and shouldn't he be punished by heaven? But he is like a fish in water in the five-dimensional universe. Not only is he not punished by heaven, but he also has a good relationship with the Tendo of the five-dimensional universe. Most importantly, there are countless heaven and earth spirits in the five-dimensional universe. These heaven and earth spirits actually do not reject him. This is really strange. Not only do they not reject him, I can feel that those heaven and earth spirits and people in the five-dimensional universe respect him like a god. He does not want to be someone with the body of adversity, but someone with the body of kindness. Exalted deity said, there are two reasons. First, someone is helping him to resist the karma of the body of adversity. Second, he is slowly changing his own fate. Nothing is absolute in this world, even the body of adversity. Mu Shi said in a low voice, can this body of adversity really be reversed? Exalted deity said, everything is possible. Mu Shi shook her head. I am still a little worried about that woman. If we help Yi Xian, I am afraid that she will target us. Exalted deity said after a moment of silence, if she dares to target my clan will move to the five-dimensional universe and live and die with Yi Xian. Mu Shi looked at exalted deity. Are you serious? Exalted deity said, this woman wants to lead my clan by the nose, how can we let her do as she pleases? If she bullies us too much, then we will all perish together. The reason why my clan has survived until now is not because we are weak. Moreover, it is better to die tragically than to live in humiliation. No matter what era it is, we still need our pride and dignity. If we don't have pride and dignity, what is the point of living? Mu Shi smiled slightly. I understand. If that woman dares to bully my clan again, we will beat her to death. Even if we cannot defeat her, we will still beat her. Exalted deity said, go and awaken more people. To deal with everything. Mu Shi nodded. Understood. After saying that, she turned and left. Holy region. Inside the bamboo house, the mysterious woman was reading an ancient book in her hands. She would smile from time to time. At this moment, Holy Leader suddenly appeared outside the bamboo house. Holy Leader bowed respectfully to the bamboo house. Master, the third lady is here. The mysterious woman put down the ancient book and smiled. Please. Outside the bamboo house, the third lady turned and left. After a while, the third lady walked into the bamboo house. She looked around and said softly, "So simple." The mysterious woman smiled. "Third lady, please take a seat." The third lady looked at the seat opposite the mysterious woman. There was a teacup on the table. The third lady smiled. "Looks like you had a guest before." The mysterious woman nodded. "She just left." The third lady sat in front of the mysterious woman. She looked at the ancient book in the mysterious woman's hands. "What book is this?" The mysterious woman smiled. "Refreshing literature." The third lady blinked. "Refreshing literature?" The mysterious woman nodded and smiled. "It's something that makes people feel relaxed and happy. However, this kind of literature has many flaws. For example, the style of writing is worrisome, lacking in content, often digging holes, repeating the same routine, and even contradictory." The third lady asked, "Just pure refreshing?" The mysterious woman nodded. "Yes. Refreshing to the end." The third lady looked at the mysterious woman. "You actually know how to read this?" The mysterious woman placed the ancient book in front of her. She smiled. "I'm just a layman. Those literary works are too profound. I can't understand them. Moreover, life is stressful. Reading refreshing literature to relieve boredom is not bad." The third lady smiled. "You have a stressful life?" The mysterious woman blinked. "My enemies are very powerful. For example, that plain-dressed woman. She can kill me with one sword strike. Don't you think I'm stressful?" The third lady was speechless. The mysterious woman blinked. "Do you really think my goal is to win over the Beihuang region?" Third young lady was speechless. "P.S. I have something to do in my hometown. I might not be able to update 5 to 6 times a day like before. Sorry." Chapter 1500. Beihuang. In the Thunderbolt Pool, Yi Xian was still crazily absorbing the heavenly tribulation lightning. As the energy of the heavenly tribulation lightning entered his body, a faint layer of lightning appeared all over his body. His body felt warm and comfortable. Yi Xian closed his eyes. With his current strength, he could instantly kill some immortal state experts. However, he knew that he still had no chance of winning against that mysterious woman. Not to mention the mysterious woman, he had no chance of winning against an expert of the third young lady's level. Because his sword could not break through the third young lady's body. Unless he combined his life sword and the instant kill sword, together with the power of faith and 4 types of domains. Under such circumstances, he might be able to pose a fatal threat to the third young lady. However, the mysterious woman was even more terrifying than the third young lady. In fact, he was quite speechless. He had finally gotten rid of the Taoists, but he did not expect an even more terrifying enemy to appear. 100 times more terrifying than the Taoists. In any case, Yi Xian was not a person who would sit and wait for death. His top priority now was to improve his body to the immortal state. If his body could reach the immortal state, his overall strength would undergo a qualitative change. Because both the life sword and the instant kill sword required a powerful body. In addition, his sword Dao had a breakthrough and his sword domain had a new breakthrough. As long as his body had a breakthrough, he still had a fighting chance. The only regret was that the insanity demon bloodline had been sealed. Otherwise, his chances of winning would be higher. Thinking of this, he was infuriated. He had fallen into that woman's trap. Although the immortal bloodline was powerful, the insanity demon bloodline focused on offense. Moreover, the bloodline could pose a threat to her, but now, it was gone. Although he had a headache over the insanity demon bloodline, he missed it after losing it. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and saw a woman standing not far away. That mysterious woman. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. Damn it, that woman is here. The mysterious woman looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, tempering your body with the heavenly tribulation lightning can indeed improve your body. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what are you trying to do? The mysterious woman blinked. Do you need help? Yi Xian quickly shook his head. The corners of the mysterious woman's mouth lifted slightly. I'll help you. As she spoke, she opened her palm. In her hand was a throbbing bolt of lightning, a dark red bolt of lightning. Seeing this lightning, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. What kind of lightning is this? The mysterious woman smiled and said, blood-colored heavenly lightning, I obtained it by chance, I will give it to you. After she finished speaking, she flicked her finger, and the crimson bolt of lightning directly entered the pool of lightning. Boom! In an instant, all the lightning within the pool was transformed into nothingness. At the same time, Yi Xian was enveloped by countless bolts of blood-red lightning. Ah! Within the lightning pool, Yi Xian's shrill scream suddenly rang out. At this moment, Yi Xian felt as if his entire body was being pierced by thousands of needles. Ouch! The lightning was currently corroding his body. The mysterious woman smiled and said, it's just a little pain, just endure it. As she finished speaking, she turned around to look. Not far away, stood a woman. Mu Shi. The mysterious woman smiled and said, actually, I gave the Northern Wilderness tribe a chance, 2 chances. The first was to follow me, the second, you can be like the Taoist faction, not helping each other. Unfortunately, you have no choice. Mu Shi looked at the mysterious woman and smiled, you killed dozens of my people just to frame young Master Yi. If this is the chance that you are giving us, then I don't care. The mysterious woman smiled. You are very strong-willed. Mu Shi shook her head and smiled, are you here to destroy the Northern Wilderness tribe today? The mysterious woman blinked. You think I can't do it? You can try. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out from the stone tablet. The next moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of the mysterious woman. The shadow gradually solidified, revealing that it was a woman. The woman was dressed in a long purple dress that reached the ground. A black cloud belt was tied around her waist, accentuating her slender waist. Her silky hair cascaded down her back, domineering but not messy. Especially her pair of phoenix-like eyes, there was a hint of arrogance in the coldness, as if she was looking down on the world. Exalted Goddess. The exalted goddess looked at the mysterious woman. I've been annoyed by you for a long time. The mysterious woman smiled and said, then come and hit me. The exalted goddess opened her palm and in an instant, a bolt of lightning fell from the clouds in the sky. The bolt of lightning landed directly on her palm, using her palm as a support, connecting heaven and earth. Lightning in the palm. In the sky, the mysterious woman smiled. Are you going to fight? As she said that, she opened her hands and 2 balls of fire suddenly appeared in her hands. One of the balls of fire was blood red, the other was dark black. The moment the 2 balls of fire appeared, the entire northern wilderness world became illusory, then slowly disappeared. The world could not withstand the power of these 2 balls of fire. In the sky, the mysterious woman suddenly fused the 2 balls of fire. Gradually, the 2 balls of fire turned into a flaming sword. This sword, half of it was red fire, the other half was black fire. Not far away, Mu Shi suddenly said, everyone, retreat. Hearing Mu Shi's words, all the elites in the entire northern wilderness fled in all directions. Mu Shi herself had also retreated hundreds of thousands of miles away. In the entire northern wilderness, there were only 3 people left. The mysterious woman, the exalted goddess, and Yi Xian. Yi Xian wanted to leave too, but at that moment, he was already entangled by the bolt of lightning and there was no way he could escape. At that moment, the exalted goddess clenched her right hand and floated up. The bolt of lightning in her hand was like a silver snake that swept across the sky towards the mysterious woman. With a cheat sound, the entire world was torn apart. In the sky, the mysterious woman suddenly slashed down with her sword. A wave of fire swept out, turning the entire sky into a sea of fire. The moment the sea of fire came into contact with the bolt of lightning, boom! In the blink of an eye, the entire northern wilderness turned pitch black. In this pitch black space, the bolt of lightning and the flames still existed. In the sea of fire, the bolt of lightning danced like a silver snake, tearing everything apart. At that moment, the mysterious woman suddenly raised her sword and slashed at the bolt of lightning. Boom! The bolt of lightning shattered and turned into streaks of lightning that scattered all over the sky. Below, the exalted goddess looked calm. She opened her palm and clenched it. Gather. In an instant, the shattered lightning suddenly gathered and returned to its original state. Moreover, the aura it emitted was even stronger than before. The exalted god opened her left hand and closed her eyes slowly. She chanted silently and gradually, thick black clouds appeared in the sky. Then, countless lightning bolts condensed in the thick black clouds. At that moment, the entire sky was filled with flashes of lightning. It was as if doomsday had arrived. The exalted goddess suddenly opened her eyes. In her eyes, there was a flash of lightning. Destroy. As soon as he finished speaking, the bolts of lightning suddenly shot towards the mysterious woman like a tidal wave. In the distance, the mysterious woman held the flaming sword with a faint smile on her face. Is that it? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly swung her sword. Swoosh! A beam of sword energy pierced through the air. In an instant, those terrifying lightning bolts turned into nothingness. The black hole in the entire northern wasteland realm was shattered again. Countless amounts of dark matter energy exploded. However, the dark matter energy from the explosion was eventually absorbed by Yi Xian, who was far away. Because at that moment, Yi Xian had activated his dark domain. At that moment, he was madly absorbing the dark matter energy. However, he was not having it easy either. This was because the shockwaves from the two women's attacks had landed on him. Even with his Taoist body, it was difficult for him to withstand the power of the two women. Fortunately, he had the immortal bloodline. Otherwise, he would not have been able to withstand it. After the mysterious woman destroyed the lightning bolts with her sword, she suddenly disappeared on the spot. Below, the exalted god suddenly took a step forward and pointed a finger at the tip of the flaming sword. Boom! An invisible force suddenly shook the surroundings. With the two of them as the center, everything within a radius of 1,000,000 miles turned into nothingness. In the distance, Yi Xian's eyes were wide open. His physical body was cracking inch by inch, but very quickly, his physical body began to recover at an extremely fast speed. The immortal bloodline. At that moment, Yi Xian felt the terror of the immortal bloodline. In the distance, the mysterious woman held the exalted goddess's finger and smiled. Telekinesis. How interesting. With that, she held the sword and spun it gently. Boom! The exalted goddess instantly retreated thousands of feet away. However, the moment she stopped, the space between the mysterious woman's eyebrows suddenly split open. Almost at the same time, the crack between her eyebrows returned to normal. However, behind her, a mysterious force spread out, covering a distance of 1,000,000 miles. Wherever this mysterious force passed, everything turned into nothingness. Fortunately, the northern wilderness was a remote area. Apart from the divine city, there were no other forces within a radius of tens of millions of miles. Otherwise, the exalted goddess's mysterious attack would have been enough to destroy hundreds of millions of lives. Seeing that the mysterious woman was unharmed, the exalted goddess's eyes turned serious for the first time. How is this possible? The mysterious woman gently touched her eyebrows and smiled. Is this your strongest attack? It's very strong. Unfortunately, even if this attack was 10 times stronger, it still wouldn't be able to kill me. Do you know why? The exalted goddess looked at the mysterious woman. The power of your bloodline. The mysterious woman nodded and slowly walked towards the exalted goddess. Yes. Other than those three, no one can kill me with a single attack. As she spoke, her aura became stronger and stronger, almost multiplying by several times. The exalted goddess said softly, "You didn't use your full strength just now." The mysterious woman smiled. "I used about 30% of my strength." The exalted goddess nodded. "I underestimated you." The mysterious woman smiled. "Don't worry, although I'm not a swordsman, my sword is very fast. I guarantee that you will die painlessly." The exalted goddess looked at the mysterious woman. "Come on." As soon as she finished speaking, a mysterious force quietly gathered in the palm of her right hand. The mysterious woman was about to draw her sword when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the exalted goddess. The mysterious woman stopped in her tracks and looked at Yi Xian. She smiled. "Are you going to fight me?" Yi Xian shook his head. "There's still a small gap between us." The mysterious woman laughed. "A small gap? You're so fresh in admitting defeat. You're just like your old man, thick-skinned." Yi Xian looked at the mysterious woman. "Are you afraid of Qing? The mysterious woman nodded. "I am." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You can't defeat her." The mysterious woman gently brushed her hair behind her ear with her left hand and smiled. "She can beat me up." The exalted goddess was puzzled. "Then why are you so against me? Moreover, you're my aunt." "I'm not begging for mercy, I just don't understand. Can you explain it to me?" The mysterious woman looked at Yi Xian. "It has something to do with your mother." "It has something to do with you." Yi Xian blinked. "Then go and look for my mother." The mysterious woman shook her head. "I can't kill your mother. Moreover, she's protected by your old man. I can't do anything to her." Yi Xian jumped up in anger. "So you came to look for me?" The mysterious woman smiled. "I'm a bully. Come and hit me." Yi Xian was so angry he almost died on the spot. At this moment, the mysterious woman suddenly turned to look at the sky. She smiled. "I'll give you face. I won't kill her." With that, she turned and walked away. The exalted goddess seemed to have noticed something. Her eyes narrowed. "Woman, what are you doing?" The mysterious woman smiled. "Since the Northern Wilderness tribe isn't going to help, I can only choose your enemy." The exalted goddess suddenly tugged at Yi Xian's hand. "Stop her. Otherwise, you'll be finished." Yi Xian was speechless. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.